All right, we're live. How y'all doing? Welcome. It's been a couple weeks. I had some friends in town and relatively busy, so we took a couple weeks off, and it's good to be back. Missed it actually. Alan, hello. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too, Marty.
And everyone, it's like to introduce you to Aaron Carey from the band Nechochwen, dear friend of mine, and probably one of the most talented musicians I've ever beheld. Wonderful to have you with us, Aaron.
Thank you, Marty. Good to be here. Good to see you guys. Been talking about this for a little while. I think initially we're talking about the next time I'm up in Traverse City, just, sitting together. And it's like, well, the whole point of it, you could be anywhere and do that. So after a couple of delays, we got on here, and the topic that I chose, she's like, what do you want to talk about on this metal chat? It was actually kind of like from some of your other videos that you had where you talk about a certain band, and like, man, this album was so solid and this and that. And then, man, they threw me for a loop. They came out with this one that got me thinking. I think it was Atrocity, which got me on the subject when you were talking about Longing for Death versus the Blue record. And I thought that would be a good topic. When bands change their sound, but not necessarily, like they got worse or better. They just evolved or something like that. So, yeah, that's what we all collectively agreed that would be a cool thing to talk about tonight. So, yeah, glad to be here, and thank you for having me as a guest. Been a little quiet lately, I would say, on the Nechochwen front.
Oh, not really. I mean, last year you did split with Opticon. That was good.
That's true. We did split with Flag as well. And
that's right. Yep.
But I mean, as far as like a full length, those are the, the things that you tend to work the longest on, especially with us. And it's been 6 years since Akamon, and we've been.
You sure it hasn't been 7? It might even be 8.
Who's counting? I think that record took us 3 years to formulate and record and get the artwork and all that stuff. This one's taken a little longer, and I mean, there were some things in there, other bands going on. I got a master's degree in that time.
Life happens.
Yep. Got life and family and all that stuff. So, but anyway, long story short, we've got this new record that we're really happy with and really proud of. I know everybody says that. It's cliche when
it's
they put
fantastic. I've listened to it probably 10 times. It's great.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. And I've listened to it a lot and tried to separate myself from it. Like, is this, everything where it's supposed to be? And I would say it's not a very really fancy record. It's just a lot of playing. This, guitars, bass, drums, and vocals. Not a whole lot of other stuff going on. So
what's the name of it?
Songcraft. This one is called Kanawha Black. Kanawha is a West Virginia reference. The Kanawha Valley goes through Charleston, and Kanawha Black is a type of flint that was used in tool production, arrowheads, spear points, and scrapers and such for many thousands of years. And throughout West Virginia, a lot of the lithic tools that you will find are made of this Kanawha Black flint. But expanding on the term kind of took a double meaning of some of the darkness that surrounded the state. There's been some very bloody, brutal events up and down the Ohio River and the Kanawha River, and just maybe even in modern times, just kind of always a black cloud over this state with poverty and opioid addiction, things like that. So we're not going into like a political thing or anything like that. It's just kind of a, I don't want to say a play on words, but kind of a double meaning to it. So yeah, Kanawha Black, and we are working out artwork and layout details to hopefully get that to the plant as soon as possible.
It's going to happen this year. As soon as the artwork's done, it's going to be coming together.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I'm totally satisfied musically, and want to get this on wax, and hopefully everybody will be checking it out soon.
Exciting. I will be. Definitely.
Maybe even put out a song here in the near future. I think you should, Marty, so people can taste of what we've been working on here lately.
We will do it. Yep, we'll get the artwork buttoned up, and then we'll do it. A little like, hey, check out what's coming type of thing.
Great. Thanks for letting me talk about it a little bit.
No, absolutely. It's a good opportunity to do so, and very excited about this topic. I'm very glad to have you here. Hopefully, it's one of many to come. And from the topic's perspective, you being a musician yourself, obviously change is something that it happens for any most long-standing bands, whether it's a lineup change or, just a logical, effortless evolution. What are your thoughts on a band changing sound? I mean, how do you, for Nechochwen has a pretty diverse palette to choose from, everywhere from classical influence, flamenco, whatever, into heavier strains of metal. I mean, how do you perceive change when it comes to a favorite artist of yours?
Wow, that's a complicated thing because, as a fan and, somebody that's bought tons of records from a particular artist, when they drastically change and you don't really like the direction that they went, natural reaction is, oh, that sucks, and it's kind of a selfish thing. Well, I'm not in that band, so it's not really up for me to say.
Right.
But as a band, as an artist, like you have to realize that you're being kind of selfish if it's just like, screw the fans, I'm doing what I want. I mean, I like that attitude to a certain extent, but try to take it into account of like some people have followed this journey for a long time. If it's like evolving, then awesome. If it falls off a cliff and it's like, wow, you guys should have changed your name at least, So I get a little in the middle on that. Also, like, what is the motivation for that? Is it to sell more records? In some way, yeah, that's logical.
That's often the case.
Everybody wants to sell more records, but at what expense? You're still talking 30 years later about Metallica selling out, and there's that, endless cliched debate over that. But is it that you get into a phase? Because I have before. I've been like, totally enamored with a certain band or a certain genre or something, like, oh man, all of a sudden I want to be like Funeral Doom. I want to be this music's so cool that it can derail you from your original vision or your original path of your music. So, here's a good point there. Lineup changes.
Yep. You
got a new person coming into the band. Are you just going to say, just shut up and play your bass, man? You know what I mean? Like they're
Newstead.
Yeah, and his wasn't even audible. So that's a good example.
Did he play it or not? Maybe he just told him to shut up and sit there and look pretty like me.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, did you have anything to add to that? I mean, I think he pretty well nailed it on the head.
No, I think that's a really good perspective on it, Aaron, that, bands can change their sound, very suddenly sometimes, or sometimes it's a more gradual transition. And there's a lot of different things that can cause it, whether it's lineup changes, label changes, market changes, or just new influences. You hear something that blows you away and you want to try to work that into music. There's a lot of it can go on, and bands, almost have to, almost every band is going to change to some degree if they stick around long enough. Not even intentionally necessarily, that just time goes by and you may be a little tired of doing one thing. You're going to work something, maybe minor, but something is going to change in your sound if you stick around over multiple albums. You can't really avoid it. Change is that one thing we all hate and none of us can avoid. And it's just, But no, I thought your perspective there too on how bands view it and how fans view it, is definitely worth keeping in mind. That so many bands kind of are just like, oh, it's my product, I'll do what I want to with it, and that's their prerogative. But when people, or followed you for years and are spending money supporting you for years, it may seem unfair to them, but there sometimes is an expectation of what they're going to have for your next product or something. So that's I can see where that'd be a weird situation to kind of be stuck in with a push and a pull.
Ultimately, bands don't owe us anything. I mean, ultimately, a band,
True.
writing, I mean, for me, is a very personal thing. It's fun. I mean, that's definitely factors in, like a brotherhood working towards a common goal. For us, it's death metal. We're writing death metal. Whatever comes out within that framework is what it is. I mean, I can't imagine saying we have to be more commercial, and that just seems so like a foreign idea to me. But I'm not on a major label worrying about numbers, worrying about if we don't sell enough, they're going to drop us. But a band at the end of the day, I've heard like when Hanneman died, everybody's like, Slayer should quit, Slayer should end, Slayer should change their name. This is a band that started off when they were fucking teenagers. They played their entire lives.
Yeah.
This was their career. And all of a sudden the fans, they should listen to their fans and quit. I mean, that's dumb. It's dumb. I understand people's comments on that, but at the end of the day, I don't see Kerry King going to work at Art Van or whatever, IKEA. You got to keep going. If it works, great. If it doesn't, whatever, you make adjustments, you keep going. But at the end of the day, they don't owe us anything. A long-standing band that respects their fans, yes, they will take their wishes into consideration, but what are you going to do? Times change, people change. You can't keep writing teenager riffs, I guess, the rest of your life. Maybe. I don't know. I guess I still am, but whatever.
Keep in mind too, like, this is kind of a side note, but just how things have changed in general in music. If you're in a death metal band or whatever, and you're thinking we need to sound, lighten our sound, become more commercial so more people buy our records. Isn't the number one album in the country right now the new what you call them from France, Gojira? Yeah. At least last week, that was the number one album in the country, and it definitely has death metal elements on it. Like I've heard 2 or 3 of the singles they put out, and who else has had blast beats and stuff? The new System of a Down song has like blast beats in it and stuff. So I think that it's getting more acceptable to have more brutal elements and things like that.
Agreed. Yeah.
Rather than, we need to sound like Nickelback to sell records or something.
Right.
It's a little more acceptable.
Nobody needs to sound like Nickelback.
They sold a shit ton of records sounding like Nickelback.
Yeah. Power to them. I'm glad they did.
Yep. Well, what you got, Aaron? Why don't we get started? Let's see what you got in your stack.
I will not be starting with Nickelback.
Here's Nickelback.
I have a feeling that everybody picked this band, so I'm going to feel bad if I pick
Don't
it.
feel bad. We've got plenty in reserve.
Okay. My first choice here is one of the first.
Let me get you dialed up here. I forgot how to do it. Oop, that's not right.
Not that one.
There we go. Hi.
I'm all by myself. Very important band early on to me was these guys.
Hey. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so
nice 7-inch too, by the way.
I'm glad I grabbed this. I think I probably got this for like $4 from Relapse back in the day. This album, my camera's like backwards.
Oh, one of my favorites.
It's still a favorite of mine, but if some of you guys have never heard this record, it's not the fastest thing in the world. It's not the most brutal, but down-tuned Finnish death metal.
Very atmospheric.
Very extremely atmospheric. And I don't know if you remember, Marty, when this came out, I'm going to say 92 or something. Whoever reviewed this in Metal Maniacs, like, tore it to shreds. And I think the editor came back and said, actually, I found this album pretty amazing and enlightening. I guess it was Catherine at the time.
Probably Catherine, yeah.
Yeah, this earlier than that demo stuff, Privilege of Evil, and it's even more harsh and raw. And I love the atmosphere of Carillion. I remember riding down the road in my friend's car and thinking, doesn't this first full song on here, I can't think of the name of it right now, The Gathering, doesn't it make you want to cut somebody's head off with an axe? What I get from this is like, so I love that bludgeoning thing, but yet they told these epic stories of where they were from, which definitely influenced me, because that's what I do with my music is I try to tell some epic stories from where I'm from too. And I've never heard of Corellia before back then. I didn't know what that was or where that was or why it was important, but I learned through that. So then they went even heavier into their, well, not heavier, but even more in depth into their homeland. But what a difference this one.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tales from the Thousand Lakes.
That's an
right?
amazing album.
It really is. And but I don't grab for it as much as the Carillion Isthmus. Some of the Doors type synth stuff rubs me a little the wrong way now.
That was a grower for me, for sure. Definite grower.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot more nostalgia for it than I have current enjoyment, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the cleaner vocals were like, kind of threw me off. I was just like, definitely wanted Carillion Isthmus Part 2 when that album came out. But I do love the artwork. And then later on, Silent Waters is another one I have. They got different singers, Posse guy, and then Tommy Judson, I think, later. And what was that? Elegy and My Cantillet.
Yep.
Those ones, it was like almost a folk spin on it.
Yep.
And I like that stuff, but they really changed their style quite a bit. And
it was a very abrupt change.
Yeah.
Very abrupt, and I think that's why they were one of the first ones to come to mind for me. And Amorphous. They went from brutal Finnish death metal, a la Disgrace, maybe, type of stuff, to some definitely more melodic and softer stuff. And I think I have, is it Under the Red Cloud? Todd, yes. We saw them. I was who were they with? Todd, some band from Massachusetts, and Into Eternity, I want to say, at the Rex Theater. And this guy signed my Thousand Lakes CD afterwards. So that was the only time I've seen them live.
The tour before, they toured with The Gathering on the Tales from the Thousand Lakes tour.
Oh, okay.
Oh, cool.
That would have been cool. You talking like when that album came out, or like it
was during that touring cycle.
Anniversary tour.
I don't know how many times they toured the U.S. for that, but I remember them playing a little shitty club in Grand Rapids. I heard about it after the fact, or I would have went, because I love The Gathering with Annika singing. But
yeah,
that would have been a good band too. They changed their sound quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
See, I'm one step ahead of you.
Right on. Right on.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, everybody.
That was in my overflow ideas, I think, here. Coming up with ideas for bands. So, anyway, that's my idea there.
I think Amorphous was probably on everyone's stack. It was mine for sure.
It was on mine. Yep. Yep. Yeah, they're one of those bands I still kind of check back on every couple of albums. Yeah, they've gone through a lot of sound changes, with the lineups and stuff. But every now and then I'll still, I'll skip an album here or there, but then a new one will come out and just like, I'll check it out. And it seems like in more recent years they've gotten more consistent with their sound, that they've kind of, fallen into this, they sound good, but they make this kind of very pretty sounding style of metal now, which it's not bad. I listened to it one or two times. It's not something I go back and want to replay a whole lot like I would Tales or Elegy, or I don't revisit it like I would Corellia or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely have tried out a lot of different sounds and styles. So yeah, they're a really perfect example to lead this off with, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're up. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to start with a pretty obvious one and kind of the granddaddy of them all. These guys. People think of Black Sabbath, so much they just think of, these first 3 albums or so. And that's, after these first 3, they don't sound the same. Even by the time of, Master of Reality, they're starting to try some different stuff. And yeah, you get into the albums after that, and they're, trying different things. There's not necessarily a huge difference, with Volume 4, but you get tracks like, is it Laguna Sunrise, where they're trying out different arrangements. They've got a very different production here. You go from this, very bottom heavy production, to this very bright and kind of clean production. You get into the 5th album, and something folks have to remember too, these albums come out just, in the matter of a few years. These days, to get through these first 5 albums, it would take a band 15 years. Black Sabbath gets all of these cranked out within 3 or 4 year window of time, and you're getting to by the album 5, you're doing National Acrobat and Sabracadabra. Folks can say that by the time you get a little bit later, maybe they've jumped the shark and kind of gone a little bit too far with stuff, but they were always trying different things. And people always just think back of them as, Iron Man and Paranoid, and those are great songs and stuff. But I feel like even now, they don't get recognition for how much they changed their sound and how they were willing to change, pretty quickly during the Ozzy era and experiment. And they never made the same album twice, really, at least until you get maybe to the Dio or, Tony Martin era. So yeah, I figured I'd start with Black Sabbath. They changed their sound a lot more than they get credit for.
Right on. Good one. Before I get real started, I just want to say happy birthday to Like an Ever-Flowing Stream. Either today or yesterday, it turned 30 years old.
Ugh,
which crazy. Means, you know what that means, boys? We're old.
Wow.
Yep.
30 years.
Yep. Definitely my favorite Sweet Death album. It's close tie. Almost Left Hand Path could be right up there, number 1, but I think Left Hand Path is second. I think Like an Ever-Flowing Stream was more savage, and the songwriting was more fierce, and the sound was a bit sharper. But anyway, let's get back on topic here. And the first band I'm going to start with, this band meant a huge deal to me when I was a young guy. And starting with this record, they started to change. Creators Renewal. When this came out, man, I hated it. They started to kind of lose me at Coma of Souls, which I like that record. I've listened to it enough to know it, sing along with it. It started to sound a little tired, and on this album, they definitely shifted into more of a hardcore influence. Milla's vocals were less abrasive and just more shouting style. Wasn't a good change for me. Now I can listen to it, appreciate it a little bit more because I've got a lot more years, and I don't take as much of offense to a band changing as I did when I was younger. I mean, a lot of these bands meant the world to me. When they changed, it seemed like an attack against me for some reason. But that was just the start. Where they ended up and getting completely spanked on was this crappy album, Endorama.
Yeah,
and it even has Tommy on it. It has Tommy on it from Corner. He joined the band at this time. And I'm thinking, holy shit, this album is going to be amazing. It's got Corner's guitar player on there. This is not at all. You could tell it's Milla singing. He does more of a clean style. The music is very industrial influenced. Very simple, pulsing drums. Wow, this was a bad idea. And the fact that they took what they were, I can appreciate and applaud them for trying something new and trying to get with the times, but this is not what I think Creator fans wanted. I know I certainly didn't, and it just did not suit them well. And shortly after this album, I think they got spanked severely enough where they started to get a little heavier. There's trying to think of the other albums. cause for conflict. I don't know. There's like a line of them where creators struggled for many years before they started. Here, cause for conflict is underrated. It might be. I haven't revisited it in so long because this whole time it was very poor songwriting. It didn't fit creator for me anyway. But creator, you're back up, Aaron.
Hey, Marty, just one quick question on the creator, because I'm not familiar with that album with Baron on guitar. I've heard that he does very, very little soloing on those creator albums, which just strikes me as so weird that they wouldn't have solos for one of the best hotshot guitarists out there.
He's credited for see if I can read it. Vitrulli is his last name, apparently. Guitars, guitar synth, and programming is what he's so it looks like he was kind of the spearhead for the exploration on this album, which wow, that just seems so strange after knowing where he came from,
Yeah. Okay.
It's been a long time since I've spun it. I just remember the disdain when I heard it. Like, what the fuck is this garbage? Anyway.
This next one, I think it's inspired by one of your chats from the last video you did, but it's Anathema. You go back to this one.
Yep.
Just quite a difference in approach here. Very raw, not quite as slow as what was to come. But when I first heard this record, which has some of the same songs as They Die.
Serenade is so great.
This is great. This is an all-time favorite of mine.
Yep.
And I've listened to this so many times. I wore out the tape. I've had the CD. Somebody takes the CD, and then you got to find another one. But this band, if you never spent time with them, you wouldn't recognize this stuff or this Crestfallen.
Yep.
You wouldn't recognize this stuff if you listen to their later stuff. But unlike the creator example, I like a lot of their later stuff too. There's a lot of people that are, on the fence or hate the newer stuff or maybe have never heard the early stuff. I think, Alan, you talked about Distant Satellites and I think Judgment as being a really emotionally heavy album. This is kind of hard to revisit sometimes. And I agree. I would say the big change for me was probably Alternative 4. And I can't find a copy of that. I thought I had it and I don't. But this was a big switch too here, Eternity. They started to get more Floyd elements in there and more epic album structures, not just song structures. But I liked where this was going. I don't think this one's as aged as well as some of the other records, but I think it was a really important step. But yeah, somebody's talking about this one, Weather Systems. I thought was a masterpiece. It took me a little while and we're here because we're here. I had to listen to them a few times, which I take as a great thing because everything they put out, like when they released Pentecost 3, I was kind of like, I don't know. And then it grew on me. And I was like, this rules. And basically everything up to a certain point, I will admit that I don't think I have the newest album. I don't think I heard that. I heard Distant Satellites. Need to revisit that. I didn't connect with it as much as you did, Alan. I connected much more with this one. And I saw him on tour for this one too.
Oh, no.
That might have helped out with that. But they're like a completely different band and not in a bad way, but so different. And through all this music, I know they'd probably hate me saying this, but this is the one I always come back to because I love the sound of the harmonies tuned down to B for Doom Death. I love the big three, the Peaceville 3 and bands like Enchantment and Nex and I know it's quite a stretch, but like Mournful Congregation. I hear very slowed down sort of similarity to those harmonies. Those harmonies are what tug on my heart
Sure.
more than the, songs, lyrical content and things like that. And I've always wanted to hear more albums like that. And I think there are very few of them that at least come close to the quality of that one. But yeah, Anathema, I like. You can put them on any day. I'll listen to any era, any album, whatever, and be pretty happy with them. How amazing how much they changed, that they retained the quality, and new people coming in and people leaving. And when I saw them, they had I didn't know who. I was like, who's in their band? It was two guys from Portugal, I think. They brought in. John Douglas couldn't make the tour, and I don't know what was going on with that, but they've just always impressed me, and I think they're extremely original. Mm-hmm. Except for that one had like a lot of Radiohead influences, and I think that was an example you're talking about.
Find Day to Exit.
Yeah, Find Day to Exit. And,
a lot of Beatles on. There's a lot of Beatles on that record.
And A Natural Disaster, I think, had a lot of Floyd, a lot of Radiohead, a lot of Portishead, that kind of stuff. And I think that was like maybe people in the band getting into phases like, man, I'm so all about this band and stuff. And then they come out with an album 10 years later and it's there, but it's like way diminished. And I think they really started to find their sound on Weather Systems and those albums around that era. And now they're broke up apparently.
Really?
And,
they broke up last year, citing COVID and just cutting into revenue so much.
It's a tough business, especially lately. Yeah.
That's a great pick, Aaron. Yeah, they were on my stack as well for all the same reasons. Absolutely. And that's a good example of a band changing completely out of metal, going from extreme metal to not a metal band, whether you want to call them post-rock or whatever. No one's going to think of these albums as heavy metal at all, but they still did extremely well with that new style. So, there's obviously a lot of talent there to be able to switch so drastically and still make really, really quality stuff. And, I'd agree that stretch right there around Find Day to Exit and Natural Disaster is, kind of, there's a little bit of a dip in the catalog there. Just a little too much Floyd worship. I like Pink Floyd to an extent, but there was just a little too much influence on that. But with We're Here Because We're Here, like half that album is just flawless. It's really, really good.
I would totally agree with that. And I think going into Weather Systems, I think they nailed it on that one. And that one even took me a few weeks to get into, but once I did, I was like, this is brilliant.
What amazes me is how they came from such heavy death doom and evolved into being so influenced by British pop and British alternative music. I mean, they sound like a very British band to me. I listen to them and they sound British, modern British, which I'm sure was great for album sales, but it's a long way from Serenades for sure.
Yeah, that would be weird if they sounded Japanese.
It's interesting how all of those big three death doom bands, relatively rapidly went into very different directions, and that really only My Dying Bride circled back quickly to that sound. And Paradise Lost did a lot of other things, and Anathema did very, very different things. There's that core, but they really didn't stay in that style all that long. They branched out fast.
Yep.
Yeah, I think My Dying Bride does not belong as much in this discussion. They've been really true to their, except for maybe like it doesn't really sound like As the Flower Withers or anything anymore, but they still have good death metal elements in their stuff.
Angel in the Dark River did not. That was all clean vocals, and that album pissed me off so bad when it came off.
Right. Yeah, that was played a lot in my circle of friends, and
it made me mad.
I liked it. I didn't dislike it. I didn't like it as much as Turn Loose the Swans, though.
Yeah, they tried a few different things right there around like that and the 34.378 blah blah blah.
I've never even heard that album. I've heard so many people bitch about it. I've never heard it.
Yeah, it's It's not a terrible album, but I mean, it's just, it was out of character for them. It didn't quite work. I think some people were already getting a little gun shy about them because some folks didn't like, Angel as much, and they didn't like the other one, like Gods of the Sun, quite as much. So I think people felt like, okay, that's one stone too far. And My Dang Bride was one of the three bands that's just like, okay, let's just reboot and go right back to where we were, and we'll stay in that lane and do it very well.
Okay, Mr. Allen.
Okay, next we'll go with one of my 5 favorite bands of all time. They've been around forever, and they've definitely gone through some sound changes, and it's Riot.
Yeah, they have.
They start out in the late 70s as, a really, really good hard rock, early heavy metal band. This is a band that's always kind of been defined by the eras of their singer. That, when they changed to Rhett Forrester, they got a little more bluesy, but really they didn't have a big change, around that period. But after this album came out, they disappeared into San Antonio for 5 years. And when they came back out in '88, they're like a European power metal band, but kicking all the European power metal bands' asses with Thundersteel.
A little thrash in that album.
Little bits, yeah. But it just is such a change from the very straightforward, sort of 4/4 Swords and Tequila kind of stuff that they had done previously that really caught folks off guard. And they only did it for 2 albums originally. They did it on that one, and they did it on the follow-up Privilege of Power, which for a lot of folks is a little too over the top, but I really like it. And then again, they have a vocalist change. They kind of reset, and then for a long stretch of time, they kind of went back to more the hard rock, heavy metal sound.
That fucking shark rules.
That right there, now that's a shark. Now that's heavy metal. Right,
it should have been a shark body with the steel head. That would have been fucking better.
Well, the best thing is if you get one of the other pressings, they go with a bird, and now that's a fucking heavy metal bird right there. That's some Judas Priest level bird shit going on right there. And then, of course, the American pressing just, shits the bed and does something completely different.
What the hell?
The moon with the guy, the fur guy on the moon.
Yep. So, Riot is one of those that went through some big sound shifts over time, but they, it was always, heavy metal connected, and they did all the styles so very, very well, which is one of the reasons they're one of my favorite bands. They've been around forever. They got this deep catalog, and they never really dropped the ball on stuff. There's albums I like better than others, of course, but they never hit this 10-year period of, putting out, subpar crap. It's just like, okay, we'll change styles and we'll just blow that style away too. Riot's, they've definitely gone through some changes.
They're one of those bands that suffered from lineup problems, people dying and singers, and that's got to be tough.
Oh yeah, yep.
All right, next up, this is a band I liked quite a bit when they started off, and that would be Cemetery's Evil Shade of Grey.
Oh, you picked it too.
This is the epitome of sweet death. Very good stuff. Really interesting guitar tone. The tremolo picking. You can hear the pick noise, which I don't know how the hell they did that, unless they mic'd the. I don't know how they did it, but it's really strong. Evil Shade of Grey is probably one of the cooler album songs from that era. Mm-hmm. But this could have stood a reissue too. It's kind of sad all the Black Mark stuff really doesn't see much props these days. But anyway, start off as a heavy sweet death doom death metal band. Then the next album, pretty quick change. This is Godless Beauty. They went into more of a thrashy, a very strange thrashy with elements of Swedish death melody. I ended up really liking this album, but it was a weird shift. But they got weirder with Black Vanity. This was a complete shift to more of a gothic thing that was all the rage back in the, what year did this come out? 94. Ugh, this was kind of early gothic stuff. I mean, that didn't really start hitting until the couple years later, but seems like a lot of it was kind of a mixed bag in the reviews section for this record. And I still, to this day, have only listened to it a handful of times because it didn't sit well with me. Where they ended up on Sundown and was this Last Confessions?
Last Confessions, yeah.
Very much, there's a Sisters of Mercy rock element to this stuff. I should hate it, but I ended up kind of getting into it. It's so catchy. It's kind of hard not to. Should they still be considered Cemetery? Probably not. They eventually changed their name to Sundown, moving forward, and continued in this style, this gothic rock / gothic metal type of hybrid. Certainly quite a trip away from An Evil Shade of Grey. Yeah, they were one of the first ones that came to mind, Aaron, when you brought up the idea. I'm like, wow, Cemetery. They're one of those bands. I mean, their first 3 albums sounded nothing alike. You couldn't even tell they were the same band. You know,
that first one was so creepy. Such a creepy death.
It is. That's the perfect word for it, Aaron. That album is creepy sounding.
Yep. That pick sound. I don't know how they did it. I don't know if they're like
Godless Beauty is awesome too, though, but it's like a totally different band. And I don't even know if I hear the thrash so much. I don't know. It's been a while since I've heard that album. I got to go back to that.
The guitar sound was definitely thinner. That could be blamed by the studio they used. I don't know. And the riffing was more punchy, crunchy than down tuned. They tuned up or something. I don't know. But weird change. Weird band.
Yeah, this was one I originally had on cassette, and I remember like putting that in the Walkman and walking around campus at night, and damn, that's just a creepy thing to do. I stopped doing it after a while. I was just like, that's just a little too. That's wigging me out. Listening to that, wandering around a dark campus at night.
Perfect album for that record. I don't know if there's a better album cover that fits the music than that one.
Right.
It's good. Yeah, one thing I'll add, Marty, this one, when they switched to this style, I played this album to death when it came out.
I need to revisit it.
And you described it very well. Yeah, it's getting that kind of Sisters of Mercy. You really wouldn't call it death metal anymore. It's got a very straightforward 4/4 strong structure. The songs are all around that 4-minute mark. I just really loved it. I thought every song had its own personality. They all fit together very well. They flowed very well as an album. I haven't revisited it as much in recent years, but for a long time, I would have considered this like one of the best 90s heavy metal albums. I just played it to death. I liked the later ones too, but Black Vanity for me was the benchmark. Last Confessions I thought was also still very good considering how far they had changed their style. But yeah, you're right. Those first 3 albums, it's just like, if you took the name Cemetery off them, just made mock-up covers and showed them to somebody, they would have no trouble thinking it was 3 completely different bands.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Aaron, you're up.
Up again. This is probably not quite as big a change stylistically, but enough of a change. And this one, Satanic Court, Heimsgard.
Heimsgard. Yep.
Satanic Court and 666 International.
Yep.
Main change here being from the Chrono. You have that one. I don't have that one. But this kind of blew me away, and I think this is an EP. It's pretty short.
Yeah, Satanic Art's an EP.
And it kind of blew me away because
it's violent.
It's very violent, and it has got some very well put together classical ideas going on with it without sounding cheesy and vampire and this and that.
Yep.
It's very artistically eclectic and well done. And you actually gave me this, Marty. I don't know if you remember that. It's been a long time ago, but this has these industrial elements, which I thought, I don't know. I'm not going to like that very much. I don't like the electronic drums as much and things like that. And then I listened to it, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, this is almost more extreme than a more black metal based version of them. And
it's extreme in different ways. Yeah.
Extreme in different ways, but I don't know. This one made my head spin more than their more black metal stuff, and including the earlier stuff that I've heard but I don't have. And I don't know. Again, not a humongous change, but enough to where it caught my attention of like, oh no, are they completely changing? Because I really like that band. These are both really brilliantly creative records.
Yep.
With a different spin on the subject. And yeah, that's kind of short and sweet there. The Heimskard. It was good stuff.
They're kind of one of those bands that went the way that a lot of Norwegian bands did. It seems like, there's bands like Tolka who maintained a black metal aesthetic throughout the entire catalog, but the main black metal bands either went weird industrial influence, or they went kind of pretentious death metal, turbo death metal style, like Zyklon and shit like that. But
yeah,
Dotheim's Guard, but they've kind of stuck to their guns though. They maintain that weird electronic thing and they continue to do it, which is cool.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm up next, right? No, Alan's up next. There you go.
Okay. Marty, you stole my cemetery pick, so I want to do this one because you've probably got it on your list as well.
I'm going to get it ready because I have things to say. Yes.
We're sentenced. This band, it's another one where the first 3 albums don't sound at all like one another.
Nope.
You start with the first one, is a good solid, death metal album, very good stuff. But you get to this one, and just the viciousness is really ramped up on this, where it's almost leaning, black or thrashy. It's much
like
more
thrash. Yep.
Yeah, it's much more aggressive and just really hateful sounding. Really kind of unique. I don't know many albums off the top of my head that have this sound to it. And 2 years later, they put out Amok, and Jesus, it sounds like a completely different group.
That's my favorite album by that band.
And it's a great album. Yeah, a lot of people bitch about this one and don't seem to care for it, and I've never quite understood why. Yes, I know it's a very different style. They lose that very fast speed that they rein it in terms of the velocity, but it's still very heavy. It is very angry sounding. The anger is still there, and it just simmers in these tracks. It's very bombastic sounding, but not pretentious. It's just this barely contained anger, just like you're just waiting for it to just burst out and start smashing shit.
Yep.
And then you have a lineup change, and this is a good example where the lineup change induces yet another big change in sound. You get to the 4th album, Down, and once again, it sounds nothing like it. And for me, that's the point where there was a big step down for the band. See what I did there?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. With Down, they start to establish this more, again, kind of more gothy influence style. Down there's one song on that album to me that still sounds angry. It's the song Bleed. I like that song a lot. But the rest of the album, it's losing the anger, and it's kind of getting into this snarky, melancholy kind of vibe. And it just never worked for me. Now, it worked well for the band. I mean, they got more popular. They sold a lot more records moving forward with like Frozen and stuff later. But I just didn't care for that direction with this band. I thought they were being very creative and putting out really good stuff in this era. But you had that one. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but Jarva leaves the band after Amok, and it's they actually, the thing I remember most about reading a review of Down was just like somebody had written, like, Jarva was so important to their sound, they had to hire 2 guys to try to replace him, and the album still doesn't sound any good.
Yeah. Well, Jarva on that album especially is very influenced by Carl McCoy from Fields of the Nephilim.
Yes.
Very much. And it's very dark, but he had kind of a weird wit to his lyric writing.
Mm-hmm.
It was dark, but somewhat humorous. Talking about this Down album, I spun this the other day, and a couple that came after it, just to remind myself. And yeah, they took 2 people to replace Jarva, but they got cleaned up. I mean, you could tell they started like taking care of their hair, wearing nicer clothes, like maybe some sweaters, working some sweaters into their wardrobe,
making sure they had the right pose for their pictures,
right, making sure they smell good. But I had the bio within the CD, and I read this first paragraph, which I'm going to share because I thought it was interesting, as this is kind of the mindset that Century Media had in 1996. It need not really be said that Sentence bear little resemblance to the original incarnation formed years ago in northern Finland. If they did, it's doubtful you'd be perusing this biography for additional information, as the band would be clamoring for shelf space in the outdated extreme metal section of the local shop. Outdated extreme metal. I get it. Century Media started out very much
yeah,
way to shit all over your own catalog.
grave,
cool anymore.
off, you name it. And now they're shitting on it to embrace this more modern, slick, commercially slanted. I mean, I like this because it's super catchy. A lot of these songs are earworms to me, and it's just kind of, but it lost a definite, Jarva brought a definite quality in songwriting and power to that band. And his band afterwards, the Black League, was really good. It's like a muck carried on. Yeah, it didn't last long. What, an EP and a full length, and that was it for that.
Yep. Yeah, one thing that just, and again, it's maybe not fair, but something I noticed about Sentence, once you got down moving forward, they became one of those bands that like people, like at work or something, if they'd find out I like him, they're like, oh, I listen to heavy stuff too. I'm just like, oh, okay, what do you listen to? I really like that new Sentenced album. And just and knowing the person, just like yes, it's like it's like something like the goth fans were all gravitating towards Sentence. These folks that liked very easily accessible heavier stuff. So yeah, hey, it's better than listening to 98 Degrees. That's great, but it's just like that's the kind of thing I would expect you would like. It just didn't work for me that direction. But yeah, they became popular. They became more accessible to is what it kind of came down to.
What was that one that you held up, Marty? The LP. No, the LP with the death metal logo.
Shadows of Past. That's their first album.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard that. I have North from Here.
Yeah, it took me a long time to track down Shadows of the Past too. It was one that was a pain to get for a long time.
Pretty raw death metal.
It must have just got reissued because early this year, or late last year, I got through Hell's Headbangers. They must have reissued it. Merchant of Death? Is that no? Cosmic Key, Century Media, DME distribution. Yeah, I don't know. But all right, I don't even know where to go. I've got so many to go with here. I'm just gonna. Is it my turn? It is.
It is you.
We're just gonna go here. This was another big band for me. Dead Brain Cells. This album is super aggressive thrash with a slight hardcore punch to it in the overall feel of the music, or maybe the structuring. I don't know, but there's like this is a very aggressive album. I love the vocals. Phil Dakin's vocals were great on this. Album is well written and it's just a powerhouse from beginning to end. Very much anticipated second album. For me anyway, DBC Universe. This album is one of those albums that I put it on and like, huh? It was not what I was expecting. They went kind of the space route. I want to say DBC started maybe gleaning a little bit of essence off of Voivod, but basically the vocals went from a aggressive yelling, shouting, screaming style to a doubled vocals, but spoken, like just talking over the riffs, which was really weird and really hard to get into. It took, this thankfully came out back in the day. This came out in '89, the year I graduated high school. And there wasn't a ton of stuff that I could afford to buy. So when I got something, I spun the shit out of it, whether I liked it or not. I ended up liking this. The music is really well written. It's a little bit more complex. This was like a hammer smashing your fingers. This one was more of a cerebral structure, really busy riffs, a lot of noodling, complex, but in a mid-paced realm. So it allowed hooks to arise from it. I don't know. This ended up being a really good album, but it is certainly a massive style shift from the debut. Did I take that away from anyone?
No.
That's one of the bands I have never checked out.
The first one is so good.
No, I've heard you talk about them. But, am I up?
You're up.
Okay. This one's kind of out of left field, I guess. Not so much metal, but I think relevant in a way. You know this record?
I do not.
I think this is the stuff that was super influential on Sun. This is
Mhm.
total drone, and I should like completely not like this.
Joe
It's just
Preston. Is that Joe Preston project?
Dylan Carlson.
Oh, okay.
It's got these things on the back here, these like testimonials. Found it difficult to think of the things that disturbed me. Afterwards, everything seemed right with the world. When I got up, I could swear I was a few inches off the ground. Sometimes I put this on and it's just like a low drone and I keep waiting for it to change. And yet when it's over, I'm like, I don't feel like I wasted my time. I don't know. It's like a lot of that drone stuff, it's just not my thing, but there's something about this low frequency rumble that I like. But fast forward a couple years, I bought this just to see, you know, what their other stuff was like. This is instruments. This is tons of reverb on the guitars, really cool guitar parts, and just spaced out. Like it's, I guess you could call it drone, but like atmospheric band, droning, clean riffs. It's not metal, but I don't know. This guy's got a Morbid Angel long sleeve on here, and there's not much elements of metal, but I thought this is, you know, in some ways a humongously drastic change in style, but at the same time, you could consider both of these drone in a way. Yeah, Earth changed, but at the same time, they didn't change that much. Gives the same feeling of this. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. So I don't know if you're into that kind of stuff. Check out Earth. There's another one. Bees made honey in the lion's skull.
That's the only one I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's similar stylistically to this hibernaculum. I don't know. I dig it, and every once in a while I'll put this on. I prefer it over Sun, which I have a couple Sun CDs and a couple Sun LPs, and I don't really spin it that often.
They bore the crap out of me.
Well, and I don't dislike it. I'd kind of agree with that, but sometimes I want something in the background, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, Earth, interesting project for sure.
Yeah, Ellen's got some props in the comments here.
Oh yeah, thanks, man. That was a fun video to do. But yeah, no, I have heard one of the other Earth ones. I just double checked. Primitive, primitive and deadly. I also heard, and yeah, I'm not big into the drone stuff, but Earth seems to be pretty good at it. I don't mind listening to their take on it. So, but yeah, I haven't heard either of those that you mentioned, so I'll have to check those out too.
Yeah, it's something worth checking out.
Okay.
Well, let's do sort of an older classic. This band made a big change in the 90s.
They did.
Most folks, it's funny. For a while, folks seemed to really gravitate towards the 90s output. And more recently, people seem to favor the 80s output. So folks seem kind of back and forth on them. But yeah, Trouble. Yeah, they were known as, they were the Christian hit metal band.
Metal.
The real white metal band. They literally released their first album on white vinyl. It was one of the only times Metal Blade did a colored vinyl release back then. And those early Trouble albums, they're not my favorites. They're not bad albums at all. A lot of people really rave about them, and that's fine. But
light for me.
They were always missing a little something on those first couple of albums. I listened to them; they're not bad at all. But you get to 1990, they the album they did then, the self-titled, was very kind of the same style, but I think they had gotten much tighter. But then you get to 92, and they go totally psychedelic Beatles hippie. Just completely, it's all drugs, weed, psychedelia, completely different vibe on I'm not sure how they reconciled the white metal with this kind of stuff.
I think that's got a Beatles song on it, don't it?
Yeah, they do. They cover Strawberry Fields Forever, maybe. I'm drawing a blank. Porpoise Song, Opium Eater. Geez, I don't remember which one it is. But it's a huge stylistic shift, and it worked really well. I tend to prefer these two over, the first three albums. And a lot of people will disagree, and that's cool. But yeah, it was such an odd shift for a band that not only, the sound didn't change as drastically necessarily. They were still in this kind of, mid-tempo metal doom style, but almost the entire concept of the band got reinvented and worked just as well. In my opinion, it worked actually a little bit better. These albums aren't perfect. They have their, there's some misses in the catalog, but it always just struck me as, really interesting how the band really changed their identity when they went from the self-title in 1990 to 2 years later with Manic Frustration, and then a couple years later with Plastic Greenhead. Folks went nuts for this album when it came out. Aaron, I actually remember I was in a record store in Bluefield, West Virginia, about the time this came out. The store owner was playing it in the store just on repeat. He could not stop ranting and raving about it. I'm just like, yeah, it's cool. I can't believe I'm listening to it in a record store in Bluefield.
Yeah, I bought it in West Virginia as well, in a video rental place, if you remember.
Oh, wow.
That. They had a small rack of CDs. I was like, what the hell's Trouble doing in here? This little video, mom and pop video place. So I bought it, and it was a little too, I don't know, not what I'd lost track of them, was expecting like the Skull or something, and a little too psychedelic, maybe.
Yeah, I can
cool.
see where it wouldn't have worked.
It's good rock and roll. I think there's some local folks that have a connection with them. I think there was a guy my stepdad worked with that used to jam with another band that Eric was in or something.
Oh, okay.
It off the top of my head.
The Skull? Was that the name of the band? Didn't he?
No, I think it was something else. I can't remember.
Remember?
Yeah, it could have been it. It could have been it. I don't remember.
Okay, is it me?
It is you.
Okay.
Yeah.
This will, I don't know. This band, love it.
Marcus.
Their first album, Recaputrefaction, to me is nearly unlistenable. Even after all these years, I appreciate it for what it is. I never listened to it, although there are parts of it on this copy. I think this is an OG copy here. Anyway, Symphonies of Sickness, where they congealed their sound into really good songs, better production. They continued with that on Necroticism, Descanting the Insalubrious, which this and Necroticism are probably my two favorite Carcass albums. Then they come out with this, which is this a change in sound? Maybe not that much. Is it more of an evolution? Perhaps. And before everybody starts throwing hot garbage at me, I still like this album. I think this is a great album. I spun the crap out of it when I got it. Was it what I wanted from a band called Carcass? No. This sounded a little more Swedish, slick Swedish melodic metal inspired. And, I wanted gristle blood farts with a good production and Jeff Walker's nasty vocals. I don't know. They just had, on this early stuff, they just had so much character of the UK grind scene. These guys, they just shined. I mean, they spearheaded a whole gore grind musical movement. This, it's like they were shooting for something a little bigger, something a little more slick, something a little more polished, a lot more polished, something that might appeal to more people. Hence the video on, a bigger budgeted, of course they're on Columbia with Earache, so there's some more money to be had. So they made slicker, more of the time, modern videos. Again, this is a good album, but it's definitely a style shift. Obviously, after this, they went into Swan Song, which is another stylistic shift, maybe further down the line from this. But I don't know. I still like this album. I never grab for it. I never listen to it. It's usually Necroticism or Symphonies when I'm going to listen to Carcass. And that's not saying it's a bad thing. It's just not what I was hoping for.
I agree with you on all that more than I usually do on anything. I had friends that had Heartwork and it was cool and I liked it. And I just, coming off of Necroticism, like that's the one that I always wanted to listen to.
Yep.
And I agree with that. And I don't even own a copy of that, I don't think. When it comes on, that liquid metal, like Heartwork comes on or something, and the song itself, like, yeah, this is really good. I really like it. But no, that's not the one I grabbed for either. Might have been a bigger stylistic shift to Swan Song than it was to Heartwork when I think about it. And I don't dislike either of those albums. I like Swan Song too. I don't know. I guess I just rather like it than hate it. But it's definitely not up there with the stuff on Necroticism, I don't think.
Yeah. I don't know why, but the style shift didn't throw me as much from because Necroticism was the first album I heard by the band, and when Heartwork came out, I was just like, yeah, okay, I like this too. It was very obviously very different, but it didn't throw me for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think my anticipation for Heartwork was greater than. I mean, I was so excited for the album. I was going to love it regardless, and I spun the crap out of it. But it took me a while to realize that this just isn't the same. This doesn't feel the same to me. It feels
that
like
could be
departure.
Expectations can so mess with you.
Too. Maybe an evolution rather than a style change.
Yeah,
this is maybe just it was going to turn into that at some point. Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because, I had no expectation for it coming out at all. I didn't even know it was coming out. I went in the local store one day, and the guy working there knew me. He's just like, hey, there's a couple of things coming out. We got promo tapes for here. You'll dig this. And it was Heartwork and Wolverine Blues. I'm just like, oh, okay, these guys have more albums out. Cool. So, I didn't have a big expectation built up of what they were going to be like.
Yeah, that big major label thing. They all got a little bit of a stylistic shift.
They did.
That may be an example of the label, a label change having a big impact.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you do know that our band name is Carcass, right? You want us to do what?
Maybe they thought it was French. It was like Carquet.
Yes. Great coupon. All right, Mr. Aaron.
Is that me? All right. My next one here. I remember reading in Metal Maniacs. I go back to this reference a lot. Pre-internet, seeing bands, pictures of bands or little features or something of, man, I wish I knew what they sound like. I bet those guys are awesome. I remember going through that. Like, I wanted to hear what Obituary sounded like. I wanted to hear what Malevolent Creation, all these bands. Well, one, I remember seeing a picture of them there. And it was the tape. I went back and got the CD later. Pestilence.
Yep.
This was my first Pestilence experience. And later got this one. I don't have a proper copy of Consuming Impulse anymore, unfortunately. But
that's my favorite. That's so good.
This is the one that I always come back to. And I have a feeling that there's probably people that got into him on the earlier stuff first. Probably saw this as a departure. This is a different vocalist. It's a little more techy. It's got Tony Choi on it, right?
Yeah.
And
a little bit slicker production.
Slicker production, but I like the feel that it's almost. I don't think it is a concept album, but it has that feel because of those little prophetic revelation, Yeah, which I think was a lot more tasteful than Embalmed Existence by Resurrection or something like that, where they put little snippets, or even the horror stuff, Mortician or something like that. I think that really worked in conjunction with the music. And then I bought this, and I don't know. I guess I like this. I didn't at the time. I liked maybe one song on it, but it seemed like it was the same song over and over and over, the same stank to the riff and everything. And I kind of wish I had this on CD. No, I just have the tape, and I don't have a good tape player. Or I don't know. Maybe I'll look it up on YouTube. But this one really threw me for a loop, and I guess they're a good one to talk about in this discussion too, because they came back, or at least one of the Patricks came back and has probably 4 or 5 albums since their hiatus.
They're about to put out a new one, actually.
A lot of that stuff, has blast beats and stuff. It's like modern death metal, and they didn't have that before. So they kind of like got heavier after they did this. But yeah, this one's super out there and experimental. And I think I just need to take it all in again because I haven't listened to this.
I actually never owned that because I heard a couple songs. They sound a little too busy for me back in the day. But I saw a reissue. Yeah, I saw a reissue of it on CD, and I bought it here a year or so ago. And I've listened to it several times. It's good.
Spheres, yeah.
I mean, it's super techy. Someone mentioned jazzy, and it is pretty jazzy.
They had a lot going on with the guitar synthesizers or whatever they were doing, not just keyboard stuff. And they had to put a hell of a lot of work into that album. And I thought the production was a little weird compared to Testimony. And I was just such a Spheres invented cosmic death metal. I don't know if I can disagree with that. I think that might be a really apt statement. But this Testimony, I was hooked on that album. Remember, I was like 15 or something. I had a job tearing the walls out of old houses, and I just destroy stuff all day. And this coal dust is coming out. These houses are like from the 1915 or something. And yeah, definitely some child labor stuff going on there. But I remember listening to Testimony. Like, that's my nostalgia for Pestilences. Tearing lath boards out and being covered in coal dust.
Yep.
Yeah. I can share that with you. Pestilence. I don't have any of their newer stuff. I should probably change that, but I have almost all the old stuff.
Yep. You need to get Consuming Impulse.
I know. A buddy of mine had a tape, and we listened to that all the time, and I just never got back to filling all the holes in the collection. There's so many things out there, and I guess I'll put that on my list.
Yep. Mr. Allen.
It's a band I need to work my way back through their catalog. I've heard most of it and liked it, but it's been ages. So yeah, I actually didn't put them on my list. I'm like, I'm not familiar enough with their stuff at this point. I'm too rusty on Pestilence, and I can't talk about it intelligently right now.
Well, that first album, Malleus Maleficarum, that thing is like thrash.
It is.
They went from thrash to Consuming Impulse, which is just dehydrated sounding death metal. I mean, Van Drunen sounds so miserable on that album. It's so good.
Isn't a lot of that vibe because of him though?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, he was a singer and bass player on the first album too. It's just
give this one a spin.
It's great. It's a good
Listen to it later tonight. That's an awesome album.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to go with one that they kind of run the gambit from making albums that a lot of headbangers love to making albums that a lot of headbangers really hate. In Flames.
Oh.
Yeah, these guys start out and it's Gothenburg's scene and all this stuff, and this very intricate harmonies and all this stuff. I always felt like Lunar Strain was a little rough around the edges. They were still getting their sound worked out. It was interesting. It showed a lot of promise, but it's not one I go back and revisit a lot. You get to the next year, 95, and the Subterranean EP is so much tighter and really, really solid, very melodic, really fast. Really like that's an EP I've played to death. But then, one more year forward and they just jump ahead to Jester Race, which, a lot of folks will consider, the In Flames album, bar none.
It's so well written.
It is a very, very well written, very well put together album.
It's like pop death metal.
It works so good. Well, but then they kept getting more and more poppy. Nobody would have questioned this as being, anything other than just, a solid, metal, classic. 1 year later, you get Horacle. And I liked this album and still do, but this is where some folks started to be like, they're making a lot of stuff really fast and changing very fast and heading, in a much cleaner, more streamlined direction. But it still has a lot of intricate stuff here. It's just cleaned up compared to other albums. It takes another 2 years, and then you're getting Colony, and you're now miles away from where you started 5 years earlier with Lunar Strain.
Colony still had its moments.
I like at least half of Colony. I still think is really, really good. It's why it fades down the stretch on side 2 for me personally. But I saw them, when they played Milwaukee. This one I think had just come out at the time, and they were amazing. They tore the place down. They had one of those crappy little 20-minute sets on the Relapse stage, and they destroyed pretty much every band at that entire festival. They were great. But yeah, then of course after this they kept going in that more accessible direction and toning things down. And after Clayman, I kind of quit paying much attention to them, like a lot of folks did. But an entire new crowd started paying a lot more attention to them, so it obviously worked out really well for the band. But yeah, they just rapidly changed so much. Yeah, that's a good point, Falafel. That for a lot of folks, this was a big gateway band. It was easy enough to get into that folks could try it out, but it was heavy enough that they would be like, I want to hear other bands like that and go from there. This is one of those bands that, I'll see a lot of people, wearing the t-shirt, and you'll get to talking to them. And it was one of the first things they checked out was something by In Flames.
Good call. And I'm up. This one, this is probably one of my favorite black metal bands, and it is Austria's Summoning.
Oh.
This album, probably not so much. This is their first album, Lugbears, where they were they're a power trio. This picture here. Yeah, I mean, this guy is way too big for this horse. What is that, a Shetland pony? Is that evil or something? Or the guy's just fucking giant? I don't know. Either way, this album, they had a real drummer. Perhaps they were a little bit more like Abigor, which was a kind of a brotherly band to this band. Mm-hmm. They didn't really get figured out what they would become until the follow-up album, Minas Morgul.
Yeah.
Where they got rid of the drummer and focused on drum machines and very much cheap-sounding synths. Mm-hmm. Which on paper sounds like it would be horrible, but the way they did it, they crafted it in such a way, it sounded like a Middle Earth soundtrack.
Yeah.
Black metal mixed with dungeon synth, perhaps.
I think they were a big influence on dungeon synth.
I think they probably were as well. But this album, though it's very long, blew my mind. I never listened to Lugbears. This album is a forgettable. I bought it just to be a completist and have the entire collection. Yep. This album is where they really start to become something special, which they would get even better as Dol Guldur afterwards. It may not be as good as this album, but the album that came out after it, Stronghold, is masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. That is an absolute masterpiece album. But very electronic. They said, fuck it, we don't need a drummer. They went and programmed everything and became very synth dominant. The vocals between Protector and Salinas were great. They accompanied each other well. This band, they evolved into something special. Now their last album was the first album they put out where I'm kind of like, okay, I'm getting a little tired of it. It just wasn't as good as the album before it. What was the album before it? I can't remember the name right now, but great band. Check out Summoning.
Yeah, that's a good call, Marty. Folks kind of forget, that first album is nothing like, all the Tolkien fantasy soundtrack stuff that they've done since then. Yeah. That's one of the few black metal bands that to this day, just when if they release something, I will buy it as soon as I can put my hands on it.
Me too.
I don't need to hear snippets of it. I don't need to read reviews of it. New Summoning album, shut up and take my money.
The smaller the horse, the more cult. New meaning to the beast of burden.
Maybe he was just trying to channel his inner hobbit and ride the pony or something.
The only horse I could get is a pony, guys. Sorry. It's my sister's. I could borrow it.
It's what happens when you take your band photos at the local petting zoo.
My fact, here's 5. Can I jump on that horse for a second?
Oh, now I can never listen to Summoning again.
Am I up here?
You're up.
All right. I'm surprised this band hasn't come up yet. Catatonia.
Oh, I didn't consider them.
You got a stack of that? Yeah.
I got your stack right here.
And then this gatefold, it's a reissue that Andrew gave me.
Nice.
It has a big write-up about exactly what we're talking about right now in here.
You want a moment to read that?
Yeah, I gotta get some bifocals or something. I can barely see it. But they talk about, their different shifts as being like chapters in the band. And I think most of you probably heard the kind of doomy Paradise Lost-ish sort of style they started out with. And let's see that here. What do I do with the rest of them? There they are. A lot of people talk about, I guess first big change was like that Brave Murder Day era, and Sounds of Decay.
Yep.
I love those. I think they're kind of universally loved.
Oh, sure.
And that's, mostly what I go back to, I guess. A lot of people talk about the big shift in Discouraged Ones as being kind of a goth rock.
Yep.
Kind of like the Sentence changed, but I think that they did it much more shoegazy than Sentence ever did. But for me, this was a big shift because there was straight up goth stuff on here. And I guess they were, for a while debating on if they're going to become a full on goth band. And I like these songs. I think they're really good.
Which one is that? I couldn't see it.
It Saw You Drown EP. It has Quiet World, which is really mellow song, and Scarlet Heavens is total goth stuff. And I own very little goth. I have like maybe 2 goth CDs in my entire collection. But that was a big shift. And then later on, I think they kind of came into their own. I bought Last Fair Deal Gone Down when it came out, and I hated it. I was like, this sucks so bad. And eat my words. Like, I love the songs on that album now.
Which one?
Last Fair Deal Gone Down.
That's the last album of theirs that I really loved, to be honest.
And you loved it too. Yeah, like
really,
I remember.
Super catchy. Really catchy.
Andrew had kind of lost interest in them, and I was like, you got to check this record out. These songs, like, you might not like them at first. They're a little monotonous, I guess, but that album grew on me so much. And Viva Emptiness, too, I thought had phenomenal songs on it. I think that's a great record. And then they got kind of into a formula, kind of formulaic for a while. And I don't dislike it, but it all started to sound the same to me. And I don't have the last one that they put out. I think it was maybe more of a return to form. I can't speak on it. I haven't listened to it, but I'm just wondering if they have more chapters in them to reinvent themselves again, or maybe at this point they're they got bloodbath going on, if they're distracted with other things or what. But I've always liked everything that band put out. Some eras more than others, but to have multiple stages of completely different types of music going on, I think is pretty impressive. So I think they're a great example.
That's a great example for sure.
Yeah, and who knows in the future what kind of stuff they'll put out. And I need to go back and revisit the newest one. But there was a stretch like Great Cold Distance and Dead End Kings and a couple others. I can't think of all of them right now. And they were good, but they started to get
very samey.
You guys are supposed to change your style like all the time.
Right.
What's going on? So yeah, I always loved that band.
Yeah.
Anything to add there, Alan?
Huh?
Anything to add there?
No, that's a really good summary. That they start off with that more death doom sound. I've got just the first 3 are what I pulled. Brave Murder Day, is still excellent. I really like Discouraged Ones when it came out. Well, it moved in that goth style. It's definitely where they start shifting the styles, but it's still really good. The ones after that, yeah, it was just like each one was kind of like another little step down for me. It's just like Tonight's Decision, I think, is the one after this one. So it's like, yeah, it's not as good as Discouraged Ones.
That one had Dan Swano on drums.
Yeah, and then they had like Last Fair Deal going down. It's like, well, it's not quite as good as Tonight's Decision was. And after a couple, I kind of lost track of the band. They're another one of those bands that, like you mentioned with Sentence, they went in this goth direction, and I would check back in from time to time with an album and be like, yep, still doing that goth thing. Like you said, they just seemed like some of those albums started getting a lot more samey than what we were used to with the early stuff. So I've never heard a bad album by them, but once they get into that era, I don't feel the need to revisit them like the early stuff.
If you're looking for any of those in there, Viva Emptiness, I think, had the potential to have huge hits. Like if it wasn't, they weren't more of an underground band, they were more mainstream. I think they could have had humongous hits on that album, and I don't think there's a bad song on it. It's more like modern metal, which I usually hate. I don't know. How do you define modern metal? Like, I don't know how to say it. Like radio rock metal. I don't want to pick on any bands, in particular, but I usually don't like that stuff that much, and I think they found a way to do it really, really well.
Yep, for sure. Mr. Allen.
Sure. I'll pick an old favorite band that went through I guess two big shifts. Their first album was very unique from anything else they did, but a lot of folks have never even heard the first album. So most folks think of them as two phases. You have 70s era Scorpions.
Oh, Scorpion.
And you have 80s era Scorpions.
Yep.
And this band managed to reinvent themselves at just the right time, where they were very popular and very successful in both those eras, and not a lot of bands made that transition all that well. But
they're a very strange band too. They did not sound like anybody ever, really.
Yeah, they've always kind of got their own thing going on, and whether that's just being German, where most of your other high profile hard rock early 70s metal bands were more US or UK based, I don't know, but I just grabbed this 70s best of because it's a really good collection of stuff from the In Trance era, all the In Trance, Taken by Force.
I love that album.
Yeah, In Trance is my favorite of that era, but a lot of good stuff there. And then you get there to the end of the decade, and there's the missing links must be Love Drive, because it's the one album I've never heard. Because then you come back from Love Drive, and you're getting into Animal Magnetism, Blackout. They're moving towards that big 80s. Some folks would call it like arena rock sound or whatever, radio metal sound. It kind of obviously culminates on Love at First Sting, but there's a transition there that they managed to reinvent themselves but did it damn well. I love these 80s era Scorpions albums. That's the kind of thing when they play it on FM radio and you're driving around. Yes, I will stop and let you play whatever track off of Blackout you want, and I'll turn it up and sing right along for a while. But it's interesting that they successfully made that transition when so many bands either just fell apart at the end of the 70s or really lost their momentum and lost their way moving into the 80s. But Scorpions changed and it worked just fine.
Talk about the very definition of legacy band.
Yeah, it's a great example.
1969 they started, same year as Sabbath. No, that was Earth.
Led Zeppelin made their first Led Zeppelin came out in 69.
Wow.
The Scorpions been around that long.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think, let's see, Lonesome Crow I think came out in 72. So it was a few years before they got an album on the shelves, but they're on the scene at the same time. Tony and Ozzy and Geezer, bumming around looking for a show at the local bar and being told to get the fuck out.
So that means I'm up next, and okay, we're gonna go with this route. Another band that was a big deal for me, Morgoth, German death metal excellence. This The Eternal Fall, Resurrection Absurd is 2 EPs put onto 1 CD. It's just great, mid-paced, excellent death metal, really abysmal vocals. Mark Grua, Rewe, however you pronounce that. I don't know, Gruy or Grue, I don't know. Great stuff. They progressed on the Cursed, which I didn't bring. I don't know why I didn't grab that CD, but it's a little more, it's the same vein as this, a little more polished. Odium, they started to get a little weird. This is still a good album. Vocals are a little less abrasive, a little more out front. The songs are a little strange. And then they lost their mind and did Feel Sorry for the Fanatic, which is, again, Century Media during that era. What year is this? 96, same year that Sentence Down came out. And they went pretty much industrial. They sound a lot like Killing Joke on this album, to be honest. And I went into it once I got over the shock. I end up liking this album. It's catchy. The songs are really well written. There's a dark aura. They embrace the industrial modern / metal influence really well without sounding cheesy or necessarily marketable. I mean, it's still a marketable band, but they didn't really take a very popular route with this. It's just, like I said, older Killing Joke, more experimental Killing Joke with a metal edge to it. I don't know. Big change. They got back together after this. Different singer after a while. I didn't follow any of that stuff. This is where I jumped off. But yeah, this is a far cry from their early stuff.
I think I had one song from that on one of those Identity comps.
Yep.
And I was like, man, I remember the tape for Cursed or something. I don't know. I got a couple of them, the early ones, the ones you were talking about.
Yep.
I hate when they put clowns on a cover.
Clowns are naked vampire.
Clowns are not metal. Clowns and dolphins and saxophones, not metal.
What about sharks?
Oh, sharks are metal as fuck.
Sharks are metal. Fast as
Shark
a
will
shark.
bite your ass off and won't even think twice about it.
That's right.
Clown, what's that going to do? Make you a balloon animal?
Yeah.
Here, let me make a puppy for you while I noodle on my fretboard. No clowns. Unless you're Acid Bath. I'll give Acid Bath a pass.
Yeah, but that was a Gacy.
Yeah, that's a clown drawn by like a... Yeah.
It does get a pass, and it's extra creepy, but I don't like the Morgoth clown.
No.
Sorry.
I'll be right back, guys.
Right on. You're up, Mr. Aaron.
All right. This is, I don't know, maybe not. Oh, here's one I forgot to show. Last fair deal going down.
That's last good one for me.
This one is kind of relevant to myself. When I first started doing Nechochwen, wanting to take a little sidestep from metal and do neo-folky type of stuff on the first record and kind of tell stories with sound like that. It was Dark Horizon put out that first one, and they said, this can work on a black metal label. And I'm like, wow, this doesn't really sound too black metal. But the example that was selling really well at the time was October Falls.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Maris and Tuoni. This is Finnish stuff, I think.
Yep.
And these sold out. These were like, they're really good, but I mean, it's all just acoustic or classical guitar or something.
Yep.
Acoustic guitar and atmosphere. Really cool covers. I was like, you can't see them too well on here if they're black and white anyway.
Yep.
But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this was all truly neo folk.
Yep.
In that sense. And I want to say it was on that trip where I met you for the first time, Heathen Crusade.
Yep.
In St. Paul. And I think it was in somebody's bin. I don't know if it was yours or God is Myth or somebody. And I bought this.
Yeah, I had copies of that. It might have been me.
I think I probably bought it off of you or traded or something, traded a CD. I don't know.
Yep.
Anyway, this is The Streams of the End, which is a 4-song EP. And this is where, at that time, those sets I was doing up there at Heathen Crusade was basically neo-folk, was me and a guitar fighting for sound with Inquisition to be heard. And so at that time I had like Winter Strife not recorded yet. That ended up being a metal song, overall. And then before Azimuth came out, thought, am I going to lose all of the small but loyal fan base I just built up with this first album by throwing metal elements in it? So I myself am, an example of stylistic change. I'd probably be a pretty strong example of that from the first album to Azimuth's or especially Akamon or something. And this came out, I think this stuff's all on Moribund or something, this later stuff. Debamore, Morty, however you say that label, and Moribund Records. This is The Womb of Primordial Nature. Really hard to see that cover. Yeah. Even like in the same room, it's hard to see what's going on there. But this was a blend of atmospheric folk and black metal. This is like a slowish black metal, very well done, but it kind of gave me the green light. People will listen to that stuff too. They'll listen to your neo-folk stuff, and if you want to express yourself with metal, hopefully people won't, excoriate you for it. Right. After all, October Falls did it quite well. So they were kind of my go ahead of, this is cool. Go ahead and do what your heart wants to do. So that was a stylistic change in a band that helped me.
Right on.
Folk classical guitar. Well, Elusive Reach. I don't know if I've ever known a definition of what neo-folk is, and I hear different people talk about it, sometimes in kind of a negative societal connotation and such. I see it as like neo, meaning a new type of, and folk as I'm using folk instruments. I wish I had a better term to use than that, because I don't really know a good definition, nor do I think I have a lot of examples of what people think are neo-folk in my collection. I love that band Tenhi and Nest and stuff like that. Maybe that's neo-folk. I don't know.
I would say there's neo-folk mixed with Americana.
I guess my question is, what is the difference between recording solo or duet classical guitar and acoustic guitar versus neo-folk? I never knew what the difference in that is. I don't know.
I think talent. I'm not trying to be, I'm not saying this because I like a lot of neo-folk, but neo-folk is a lot of chord based, just chords droning with a little percussion behind it, dreary vocals, whereas Nechochwen definitely comes from, there's neo-folk there, but more of a classical foundation, which is a lot more intricate. It's a different style set, I think. I'm not saying that
music. I will say that.
What's that?
I've always sucked at describing my own music. It's like, I don't think anybody would listen to my music just based off of my description of it. Yeah.
Like Death in June, I think they're like the godfathers of the whole genre. And I like some Death in June. And it's just, chords, droning chords, I
don't have any idea what any of that stuff sounds like, to be honest.
Yeah.
My definition, I guess, is more like Michael Hedges, Phil Keggy, like really good fingerstyle acoustic guitar players. I guess maybe you could just say acoustic music. I don't know.
There you go. Ben says neo-folk is Dracula country.
I've never been in Dracula country. This is hillbilly country.
Oh yeah.
I hear Dracula country really bites.
Damn it. He got me with that one. Speaking of, the dad joke guy of the night. Alan, here you go.
Okay. No one's used this one yet, so it's definitely time. Here's a band that went from the dungeons to the streets.
Ugh, they should have stayed in the dungeons.
Sabotage. There's a big shift in the middle of their career. They do these early albums, up through Hall of the Mountain King. Right. And there's some hits and misses along the way, but overall, it's a really good catalog. Sabotage was always kind of unique among, these 80s US heavy metal bands. So many bands, were singing either, party metal or, fantasy metal that was, knights and dragons and warriors and, being tied up by Mistress Spanx a lot with, weird bondage lyrics. And these guys were always like the trolls in the basement of the castle where the dragon lived and, creeping out at night to steal your children and shit. But then you get to this, and
not a bad album.
Not a bad album. No, it's a transitional album. It's not bad. There's still some elements. Some of these songs could have passed for, Mountain King leftovers, but they're definitely start all of a sudden going for a much more grandiose kind of sound. They're getting into this, and it'd be fully realized on Streets where they go for this, the full-blown rock opera with parts and pianos and stuff, and completely, different from what they had done just a few years earlier on Mountain King. Most folks, of course, are going to prefer the early stuff, and I love a lot of the early stuff. I do love this particular album by them. I thought they, among heavy metal concept, rock opera albums, this one is heads and shoulders above most of the others. It's really up there. It's very emotive. It's very introspective. It's the same basic story as Wasp's Crimson Idol album. But and I like Crimson Idol a lot, but I actually think this album does that whole concept of the rise and fall from grace, and then trying to find yourself again. I think this album does it much better overall. Nothing against Crimson Idol at all; it does it excellent as well. Yeah, and from there they really went into this direction where they focused on this much prettier sound. They would do more of the concept albums that have the big rock opera quality, and that would of course eventually lead all the way into the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which has been really the only thing they've done for the last 20 years.
Is that Edge of Thorns one? Is that with Alex Skolnick on guitar?
No, this is the last one with Chris on guitar. Alex is on the one after this, Handful of Rain.
It's boring. Handful of Rain.
I liked it a ton when it came out. It hasn't aged incredibly well, but I still like this mid 90s era of Sabotage. After, let me think, Dead Winter Dead was the one that had the Yugoslavian, Chechnyan, Bosnian concept. And that was still a pretty good album. It's also the one that spawned the Carol of the Bells that got redid by Trans-Siberian Orchestra and became the Christmas song. But try telling your grandma that her favorite Christmas song from the past 20 years actually came from a 1994 album about genocide by a band called Sabotage. That makes for interesting holiday discussions, I can tell you what.
Yeah.
But after that point, Sabotage, I felt like they lost the plot. The last few albums they tried making, they just kept going back to the same well, but every time the idea was just less interesting. They kept doing the same concept thing, and
that band lost its muse.
Yeah, they had found a new muse, another guy was helping them write a lot of this rock opera stuff. I'm blanking on his name, Paul O'Neill. Yeah. But they just kept going back to that same idea of, let's do the concept album about a tortured soul and trying to find, meaning again. It's just like, well, it worked once or twice, but you got to mix it up every now and then. So yeah, by the end of things, they weren't interesting anymore, but they had a great 80s solid heavy metal catalog, and they initially made the transition to this kind of big symphonic, orchestral sound really, really well, I thought. They just lost their way over time.
Yep, for sure.
But yeah, Streets I will still stand by as one of my favorite albums from the 1990s. It's an amazing rock opera type album.
I've got a whole bunch of them that I've gotten a used bin, and The Thorns one I haven't listened to yet. The Handful of Rain almost went in the garbage can. Wake of Magellan.
Don't waste your time on that one.
I already listened to it. It was fucking boring.
Sorry, yeah, it's not terrible, but yeah, it's like Marty just said. It's very boring. It goes on too long. It just doesn't go anywhere.
No.
Edge of Thorns is worth it because it does have Chris on guitar still, so it has its moments for Chris's final album at least.
What'd you say, Aaron?
I said Streets had some heavier stuff on it, some faster stuff in there. That whole DT Jesus story. Yeah, it was. I don't know, concept albums in general. I don't come back to like a whole lot. You could be really invested in the whole album, pretty much, But I think I don't know. Some of their back catalogs are really, really good. I did not like it. What is it? Fight for the Rock.
Nobody likes Fight for the Rock.
Yeah. This is cool because I never even hear people talking about bands like this. There's not a whole lot of people around here where I live that would talk about Sabotage. So it's cool. Oh, you think it sucks too?
You know where I got my Fight for the Rock?
What's that?
You know where I got that Fight for the Rock LP?
No.
From David.
I bet he's still shedding tears about getting rid of that.
I picked it. I bought it. I picked it. I got it. I'm like, God, this is fucking terrible.
I have one of them for you. I keep forgetting. Next time I come up, or I could send it to you, because I have the tape too. Dungeons Are Calling. I have that LP.
I've got it. I've got it on CD. I don't have the LP, but I got the CD.
Yeah. I have the
great. Yeah.
And the LP. But yeah, that was a cool one. Siren. All that stuff's good. Yeah.
All right. I'm starting to get into pretty obvious territory here, so I'm going to try to finish up a few of these less obvious ones, but Gorefest Erase. This band, I mean, my band is named after a song on...
Had that in my stack, Marty.
False. Yep. Mind Loss and False are completely great albums. Then they follow up False with this festering turd, which I've owned like 3 times in my life. I keep getting rid of it. And I think Ben actually sent this to me, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to hang on to it this time. I don't know why, because it is such a crappy record. What happened was really great, well-written, heavy-ass death metal, and they went the groove route. I don't know what year. Let's see. If they were touched by the Entomb thing, I don't know what it is, but Jan's vocals went from a death growl to shouting, and this album is really bad. Erase, Follow Me to Where the Real Fun Is. I mean, really dumb lyrics. I'm assuming it's from a language barrier. I don't know, but yeah, not a good album, not a good style shift. The band broke up after a certain amount of time. They put out like Chapter 13, Soul Survivor.
I remember that.
Broke up. When they got back together, they found the old fire, La Mutra, I believe, or La Murder, I don't know. Their comeback album was a bit long, but it was good. And their last album, Rise to Ruin, is just as good as False. Such a good record. Yep, Rise to Ruin is fucking a favorite. It is so well written, so good, well produced. They ended where they started, basically. But yep, definitely a band that I loved a lot that changed their style for the worst.
Yep. I had a giant poster for Erase up in my dorm room in college just because I got it for free.
Yep.
I think my girlfriend at the time had bought that album, and yeah, it was one of those albums we tried so hard to like it a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, she bought the record. I've got the poster. You want to play it again? No, not really.
No. Yep. All right, Mr. Aaron, you're up.
Surprised
I'll be right back. I'll be listening though.
Sure. I'm surprised this one hasn't come up yet.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's a great one.
Yeah. I was just listening to this earlier today. This one comes with a picture disc in a regular case, this reissue or whatever. It's like early Swedish death metal. But this isn't really the Tiamat that I grew up listening to. It was this one. Where'd it go? Oh, I got this Clouds tape.
Yeah.
I think that's the first one that I heard, the first one that I had, and
Same here.
very cool. Not too fast, atmospheric. This is one of those bands that I always call dark metal. I don't know if other people use that term, but In a Dream, Sleeping Beauty. This has had really cool stuff. And then Wild Honey came out, and all along you have these huge stylistic shifts. Wild Honey, great artwork. And this one, along with Angel in the Dark River, Serenades, I'm gonna say, this was a record that my friends that weren't even that into metal, they're just into partying and hanging out, loved this record because it was trippy and interesting and just cool all around.
Yep.
I think this sold really, really, really well for Century Media.
Yep.
And what a stylistic shift and kind of like tightening of the songwriting skills, but also the atmosphere building off of Clouds.
Yep.
And great record. My friends that, when they were partying would listen to Rage Against the Machine and Soul Coughing and stuff like that, which is cool too. But, I always wanted the heavier stuff. Would always be listening to this or some My Dying Bride. It was just on constant rotation. But the one that I listened to probably the most is this one, Deeper Kind of Slumber.
Yep.
Very droney at times. And I'm not talking when I was, partying or, hanging out with people. This is what you put on before you go to bed. And it had a purpose in that. That was a great chill out album. Some of their other stuff, Judas Christ, I thought was really good. The one after this, Skeleton Skeletron, I was not into very much. It seemed kind of like a rushed affair, and but this one's great. This is probably my favorite one, or my most listened to one overall. But what a change going from like this early Swedish death metal and that band before that, Treblinka,
Yeah.
into this. What this Sumerian Cry is, fairly raw. I mean, it's not far removed from Grave and stuff like that. Maybe not quite as fast, but definitely brutal. And the vocals are just as gruff as any of those other bands that were, 11 years old and Swedish at the time or whatever. So anyway, huge shift. I think they were the first example that came to my mind of such a stylistic shift. And still enjoy that band quite a bit. I think they put out some stuff I heard clips of a couple years ago. I'm behind on their stuff.
Didn't the main guy leave the band and gave the rest of the band the nod to keep going without me type thing?
If that's the case, I had not heard that, but that's very interesting.
That could be Therion. I don't remember.
It's kind of like Sabotage, right?
Yeah.
Didn't John Oliva step aside, or maybe that was Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I forget. But yeah, I don't know if that's the case or not. I think the last stuff I heard still had him singing.
I could be wrong.
It was heavier. It was the heaviest stuff they've done since Clouds, at least. Or what was that?
I could be thinking of Therion, which is another band that went a very similar trajectory.
Yeah, from like Of Darkness to the opera stuff. Huge.
Hodrak and Homegus was the big shift point.
Huge.
For that.
I didn't even think of them. Yeah.
Someone mentioned them in the comments earlier. I'm like, oh fuck, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
Whoever mentioned it, that was a great call. I didn't think of it either.
I think it was Metal Ben. I think that said that. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Allen.
Yeah, that's a great pick, Aaron. Tiamat was an interesting band. They were a good example of a band I just lost track of when I moved right around the era that Wild Honey and Slumber came out. I moved from Ohio to Texas, and none of the local stores stocked any new releases for metal. So if I didn't special order it, I wasn't getting it. And so, yeah, the band fell off my radar at that time. I still need to go back and check out some of those.
Listen to Judas Christ. Good record. Very good record.
I'll check it out. All right. Let's see. Another old favorite in a band that changed but didn't change but really changed sometimes was Candlemass.
Ooh, yeah.
They put out these iconic early albums, especially with Marklin on vocals, and then all of a sudden he's not on vocals anymore. And whether you liked him or not, he was a huge part of their sound, and you definitely went through some changes there. You had Chapter 6 is still a doom metal, but it's a very different style. It loses a lot of the grandiose classical sound to it. It's a lot more stripped down. It's more of a 90s doom metal sounding album, if that makes any sense. But they after that they went even further afield, especially with this album and the one that comes after it. They it's dark, it's doomy, but it's getting more experimental. This was after they tried the whole abstract algebra project, and it didn't completely get it off the ground. But really, this one makes them. This is still excellent doom heavy metal, but it's so different from what they were doing just a few years earlier.
Such a great record.
And it is such an incredible record.
It's a great record. It sounds nothing like Candlemass.
It really does. It does and it doesn't. Yeah, it's when you listen to the albums before it, you see them walking in this direction, but it still catches you off guard. I remember hearing it for the first time. I was just like, it was one of those you had to stop. It's like, I like this. I'm just having trouble connecting it to Candlemass in my brain.
Yeah. Oh, the feedback swells and the tone, the guitar tone on it rules.
Yeah. Yes, everything. And a lot of folks, sometimes they, folks, write it off too much as like, oh, it's kind of a Black Sabbath, worship album, which it is, but it's so well done and still has so much character to it that it shouldn't be dismissed as that. Some of the stuff on here is just really amazing, and yes, it has a throwback sound, but it works incredibly well. And then they were done with that. They did the reunion album with Messiah a few years after that, which now that's one that I got too hyped up about. And then when it came out, I was kind of like, oh, wait, what?
It was good, but it wasn't great.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of those albums, if I hadn't been hyped up for it, would probably have sat with me fine. But I mean, I was literally just waiting at the door to tackle the postman for that thing to show up. And I get it. And the player's just like, oh, it's fine.
It's fine. Yeah.
Move next. Yeah. And then of course, they stuck to they move on. New vocalist did well for
that's a great record. That's the only one that he did that was great.
I think they're pretty consistent, but I don't replay them very often. But they get into a very steady style with them. But yeah, they never really went back and experiment and kept delving down this path. They wandered and then they got the band back together and then they did other things. But yeah, if by chance you missed this middle, mid and late 90s era Candlemass, because these weren't all that easy to find at the time. People were not interested in this style at the time whatsoever. They were hard to get stocked. It's really worth checking out. The only reason I found this was two things. I had moved again, and the store in North Carolina was stocking anything that got a decent review in Metal Maniacs. And this got a really, really good review in Metal Maniacs, probably from Jeff.
Probably Jeff.
And,
I could never find that one. I have the other one, and I think it's all Michael Amott, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's got Michael. Dactylus has Michael Amott on guitar. It's, I think, the only one he played on with them.
And it sounded like Carcass Heartwork.
It sounds
maybe not.
a little different than that.
Yeah. But that was the only reason I could find this. If it got a good review in Maniacs, Daniel at School Kids Records in Raleigh would make sure it was on the shelf within a couple of weeks. And so
I bet that review was Chris Maycock. I think Maycock did that review. Could have been Maycock. I can't remember.
I don't know. I didn't dig back through to find out. But yes, whoever reviewed it did a really good review on it. And I was just like, oh, okay. I had heard Dactylus at that time and liked it, so it wasn't a leap for me to have to go out and buy it anyway. All right, Mr. Marty, back over in your court.
Well, we've already kind of talked about this, but I had to show it. Atrocities, Blute, basically longing for
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Hallucinations and longing for death were a definite progression. The first album turned out very techie death. The second album, Longing for Death, was very streamlined, really good songwriting, a little settled into the style, a lot better of an album. So I was very much into this band, and then this album came out. And this is garbage. I mean, it gets to song 5, I'm in Darkness. It starts to feel like old Atrocity. A little more aggression, a little more screaming, but the first 4 songs, there's like a weird hollering style, vocal style. Alex Kroll, he lost his mind on this album. I don't know. The halfway point, it gets better, and it's left me wanting to keep this record, but man, what a style shift. And from here, they even got weirder into more pop stuff. Not what they started out as. It's kind of a shame because they were a great death metal band. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to keep going on and on about this record because it's not that spectacular, but worth hearing. But man, if you can get past the first 4 songs, it does get better. So if you can go that long, you might like it. But anyway, hi, Aaron, you're back.
Hi. Sorry, I missed your atrocity.
That's right.
That's an interesting take on that one, Marty. Do you think if the tracks had been like in a completely different order and say those first 4 tracks were scattered over side B, would people still have such a bad reaction to that album then?
If the album started off with I'm in Darkness, I would have been pleased because it's a good song. But the vocal style, this weird B-L-U-T type of shit, it's not, I don't care where you put it on the album, it is not good. And it's like throughout the first 4 songs. And if you mix those in, it would have broke up the flow even worse.
Fair enough. Do you want a funny side story on Atrocity for 2 minutes?
Sure.
I am 99% certain this is Atrocity, and I'm not remembering the wrong band. Years ago, was over at Georgia College and State University, talking with some colleagues. Nobody's ever heard of the school. It's the school where Ben Roethlisberger did the thing. So there you go. But anyway, I was talking to one of the guys in the bio department there, and somehow it came up that I liked heavy metal stuff. And he's just like, oh, that's so funny. Have you ever heard of this German band called Atrocity by chance? I'm just like,
weird.
Yes. This is going in a strange direction.
Yes.
It turned out a couple of years before this, one of the band members, and I don't know which one it was, had contacted him just out of the blue. I was like, hey, I've been reading like some of your research papers. The guy specialized on some kind of little freshwater crustaceans. I don't remember what they were. And was like, hey, I've been reading some of your papers. I'm really interested and fascinated with these little critters. And I'd like to come do field work with you to photograph them. And he's just like, wait, what? But I mean, he talked to the guy. It was a legit thing. And yes, the guy flew over from Germany, met up with the guy in this little small college in Georgia, and went out for a couple of weeks that summer in the field with him and had these really high-end photography equipment, taking like these beautiful like up close magnified snapshots of these little, I don't know if they were snails or clams or some kind of fucking thing without a backbone that lives in a pond. And yeah, it just was happy. He was super nice, very helpful, and was literally just happy as could be that I let him come over here and take pictures of these things for 2 weeks, and then went back to Germany.
Wow,
it was a guy from Atrocity.
And it was one of the guys in Atrocity. I don't know which one. He didn't remember the name off the top of his head, and if I did, it's been 10, 12 years since I met him, so it's lost. But I am almost certain it was one of the members of Atrocity. Because he was like, yeah, it's a German metal band. He said they played something like death rock metal. They began with an A and like Atrocity. He's like, yeah, that was it. So yeah, apparently they were into photographing snails on the side.
Can you imagine specializing your entire scholastic career is based on crustacean, some little specific snail? If climate change happens and they die off, then what? You got to practice your. Would you like fries with that?
Marty, this is up your alley. I know a lady in Colorado. Her entire career is based off of studying dinosaur poop, and I swear to God, I'm not making it up.
Glorious.
That is her entire career. She spent 30 years looking at fossilized dinosaur turds.
So when a dinosaur dies, is it shit? I mean, is that where they find the poop? Because it seems like it'd be a really random to like, oh, this is clearly dinosaur shit.
Well, there's not a whole lot of things back then that could drop one this big. So when you find them, you kind of know where it came from.
Right?
But I have derailed things long enough.
Who is next? I'm lost now. That would be me. No, Alan's next.
No, back to Aaron.
Oh,
you just did atrocity, and I derailed us on atrocity.
Right. Sorry.
All right.
Oh, here we go. Here's an interesting little sidebar. One of the atrocity drummers played for Vanilla Ice. Somehow, I'm not at all surprised by that.
I didn't think that he had drums in his music. Wouldn't that be
I
like?
think he had music in his music.
Well, he remember Vanilla Ice went Korn style for a while. Remember that?
I do not remember that. I just
did.
remember
Now I remember it.
Dreads, and he was like doing the
one song. And in fact, my son asked me a question about Vanilla Ice this morning. Talking about random, yeah. He's like, didn't he steal a song off of somebody? I was like, I think he won in court. He did not steal that, but it sounds pretty similar to me. Anyway. That might be contract.
Yeah. Good one.
Christ. All right.
Good choice.
All right. We know what this sounds like. And then they kind of streamlined into
such a good record.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're both great, right?
Yeah.
I don't really dislike anything they've ever done, but they did change a lot.
They did.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that really got me at first of like, I don't know if I like this as much is A Dead Poem.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like it. It's a little, I don't know how you describe it, Marty, gothy a little bit. I don't know.
A little bit, but they maintain their, the triarchy feel. The songs weren't really as, they're a little, it's like Triarchy of the Lost Lovers dumbed down just a little bit.
Yeah, and more heavy metal, traditional metal.
Yeah, there's some good songs on that record, though. There's some good shit out there.
Yeah, there is. There's one of them I think is an instrumental on here that I always liked a lot. But one thing that always makes me a little skeptical is when they sell the album by giving you a free
CD.
Yeah.
You will like this. So it comes with this black metal compilation, which is kind of ironic because up to this point, this is the least black metal thing that they ever released. And they had a stretch gothic metal really well. I agree.
Yep.
I like all that stuff. There's a few albums I don't have. And then you got me back on the path, Marty, with Theogonia.
That album rules. That's a great,
really, really great Ron and Christ album. And I don't know. It's not a change for the worse. It's just different. But I like From Here to Here, probably the best in their catalog for me personally. Maybe a lot of that's nostalgia. But what a great band. And a lot
the
of
albums after it,
like Thou Art Lord as well.
The two albums that came out after A Dead Poem, one was called Kronos, and the other one was The Sleep of Angels.
Sleep of the Angels.
Those two were kind of boring to me. I thought that they dumbed it down a little bit more after A Dead Poem, and it got kind of boring. But they picked it back up with Theogonia for sure.
Yeah, I think was it Moonspell that was kind of in parallel with them for a while.
Moonspell?
Yeah, stylistically, am I thinking of the right band?
Moonspell went really gothy really quick.
Yeah,
they did.
It's just a couple albums from all those bands, Century Media bands, late 90s. Put Dark Tranquility in that category as well that I kind of lost touch with. And then, now that's...
It's coming.
Oh, you might as well talk about it because you're up next.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, that's a good segue into Dark Tranquility.
To wrap up with Ron and Christ, if anybody ever ever wants to get the world's dirtiest look from a record store clerk, wander out into West Texas and find a used record store that happens to have a used copy of a Rotting Christ album and take it up to the front counter. Yeah, I've been there. I'm surprised they didn't try to take me to the town square and burn me as a witch. You could tell they're just like, you buying this, boy? We don't cotton your kind around here. It's like, here's my $8. Just let me out of your fucking store already.
You just gotta wear their shirt too.
There you go. Message from Todd there, Aaron.
Did that cover it? Oh yeah, we did one with the Forest.
Yep.
And they're one of those bands that, for me, I didn't grow up with the first two. I got those later. And in fact, this is a first press Osmos I got from my friend John in Athens. This would be a little tough to find outside of Athens, I think.
You're probably right.
That was a very, very kind gift. And I love this record. But the first one that I ever bought was Triarchy, and I had to drive to Pittsburgh to find it because I heard that song Archon on one of those identity comps, and that turned me on to Rotting Christ. And I guess indirectly, Todd got turned on to them. I don't know. Is this my favorite record of theirs? It's probably overall the one I listen to the most.
Oh, it's great. Great.
Yeah.
And maybe Theogonia, too. I think that record's great.
Yeah, Triarchy was my first two. I had never heard of the band, knew nothing about them. I just saw it, just like, that looks interesting enough. I'm going to take a chance on that. And yeah, that's a cool album.
Yeah, it is. I don't think they sounded like what I thought they were going to sound like.
No, definitely not.
It's kind of relevant to what we're talking about,
Yeah.
Because I think Thy Mighty Contract sounds kind of like how I thought they would sound.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
More melodic than I picked.
Very Greek sounding.
Called Rotting Christ, I would think would be real raw around the edges, but they had a lot of melody.
Yep.
Great.
Okay, I completely blew the Dark Tranquility segue, but oh well.
That's all right.
Yeah, I figured this is a band to me that, in my mind, always their career trajectory followed In Flames a little bit. That they start out, their early mid '90s, defining the Gothenburg sound. Really, just beautiful, intricate, guitar play. Sky Dancer, I thought was maybe a step ahead of Lunar Strain at the time, and they proceeded with some just they got really tight really fast on the Gallery and kind of culminated on Mind's Eye.
Fantastic.
Great record. Another one that's just really well written. The songs fit together so well on this album that lots of bands make lots of great albums. Only one here and there do they really sit down and they get all the songs in just the right order where they complement each other to the point of making the whole thing better. And this is one of those albums that the flow on this album is just incredible. But then after this, they move over to Century Media right at that same time frame where Century Media is not interested in that outdated extreme metal anymore. And their albums take on, they don't, of course, get quite as pop accessible as In Flames did, but they get pretty heavy on that gothy side sometimes, and the albums get very interchangeable sounding. These albums have so much personality, and every song is just really chock full of interesting ideas. And then you get to some of those others, are just like it's the same song 10 times in a row, and the next album is the same song 10 songs in a row, and they changed it. They completely lost the magic for me really quickly. Yeah, I stuck around for 2 or 3 albums and was just like, I don't like these. I don't need to hear any more of this if this is what they're going to keep doing. It's a real shame because the early stuff was so good, and I think it gets now overlooked because they've been around so long. They put out so much of this kind of mediocre cookie cutter stuff that people forget how good they were early on.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that statement there. I saw them in Pittsburgh with Opeth, and I've never seen a band heckle so bad.
Really?
Dark Tranquility. Not that that's relevant. People are being assholes, to be honest. They came clear from a different continent to play music, and they have a lot of great albums. There's no reason to be disrespectful to them. But yeah, they were heckled quite a bit, which surprised me.
Welcome to Century Media. Here's your signing bonus. It is a button-up shirt You're going to need an iron, and they need to be dry cleaned. So when the photo shoot happens, make sure they're clean. Here's some Germac. It's for your hair. You put in your hair, it takes out all the snarls. Anyway, I'm sorry. Here we go. Here's an obvious one. I had to pick it. Soulside Journey.
Yeah.
I got this on tape when it came out, and probably one of my top 20 favorite death metal albums, easily. So well written. Since they're Norwegian, they didn't sound Swedish, even though they recorded at Studio Sunlight. It still sounded like a different band. They sounded like Dark Throne with a little bit of, there's a definite Autopsy vibe on this. You could tell they're a big influence. Worshiped this album, played the shit out of this tape. When this tape showed up at Camelot Music, I jumped on it, couldn't wait to hear it. Got it in the truck, put it in the tape player. I'm like, what the fuck happened? What happened? This is not what I expected at all. Maybe listened to the tape once, was kind of pissed off by it, put it on the shelf. 6 months later, I came back to it and went, oh, I get it now. They're going for a Bathory Celtic Frost thing. Okay. But talk about a band that changed stylistically 180 degrees. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Taking really excellent death metal and opting for the stripped down, cavernous sound of early Bathory. Mm-hmm. Big deal. Very influential. Millions of bands, a lot more bands copied this style than they did the Soulside Journey style.
Huge change.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I'm amazed it's been 2 hours and 17 minutes, and this is the first time anyone's mentioned Bathory.
Oh, it's coming.
Yeah. There's a lot of changes there too.
I was kind of waiting.
Saving it for the last. Gotcha.
No, I got one saved for the last. All right, Mr. Aaron.
Up around again. Okay. It's a real quick one here. Okay.
Sorry, I want to say first, I'm sick, so if you hear me snotting and wiping I forgot Kleenex, so I'm wiping my face on my clothing, and if everybody hears me sniffing and snotting, I'm sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
Cold's going around.
Yep.
Up here. All right, this is Foreguts.
Oh, good one. Yes, yep. People were saying in the comments. Yeah, great
really?
album.
And these are the only two that I currently have from back in the day.
And they're great.
They are, but when I was in school, in college, like that Obscura came out. Man, that knocked all of us out. Like, what the hell's going on this record? And those vocals, we called them bovine vocals. And I don't own a copy of Obscura, and I'm going to have to give it a spin on YouTube or something again. But that was one of those things where they didn't get slicker and polished and gothy and more appealing to the masses. They did the most extreme, crazy, experimental, let's just do it type of thing ever. And I mean, I've heard their newer stuff too, and it's really good. A little more conventional, but like at
Colored Sands is a great album.
Yeah, a Pleiades Dust EP, like it's all good stuff, but it's somewhere like in the middle. It's experimental, whereas this was, I think, a little more traditional death metal type stuff, and it's just extremely technical. I had this tape way back too, and finally got the CD later. But
that Considered Dead is very Florida sounding, if you think about it, for the era it came out.
Yeah, Dan Seagrave cover, I think. Yeah. Anyway, changed their sound 4 times, really. Yeah, I guess these records to Obscura, back to so Wisdom
to Hate.
Yeah, and all pretty good.
Yeah, really good.
So yeah, this is a quick mention there. Foreguts.
Good stuff. Good choice.
Yep. Let's see, I'll do a quick mention too, mainly because Matt over at the Dark Path did a really, really good deep dive on this band not long ago. But Samael,
yeah,
it's another one of those bands where you listen to 3 albums in a row and they just don't sound anything like one another. The first two are, very cool. This has always been my favorite far and away in the Samael catalog. This is another album where the track listing is just put together so incredibly well. It's got a really unique sound. Don't print out this cover art and stick it up on the door to your dorm room. It won't stay there very long. just a little life tip for you there. But then after this, they, again, keep, quickly, changing styles. Just a couple albums later with Eternal, they're doing more of like, an electronic, style that's really influenced by Depeche Mode. And, they move on from that style as well after, a couple of albums. So Samael really kept reinventing themselves quickly. They never stayed on one style for very long until you got later into their career. But, I liked at least up through Solar Soul. I think I had gotten every album, and then it was just a band that you can't keep up with every band. Some of them are going to fall off the wagon sooner or later, and I eventually lost track of them. But I was always interested to see what they were going to do because it became clear they were not going to sit still very long.
If you haven't spent much time with the album that came before that, Blood Ritual, spin it again because it's a really good album.
Oh yeah, Blood Ritual is good. I don't mind Worship Hymn either.
Well, I don't mind that either. But man, Blood Ritual has had this really satanic atmosphere, really well written.
Yeah, it's those early ones have that much slower and in a way simpler sound, but it was a good example of, again, just another one of these early black metal 90s black metal bands that had a very distinct take on the style, but then they kind of went down a very different path. They didn't stick with that, but Blood Ritual is awesome.
Yep. Okay, well, since I mentioned it, Bathory, obviously
there we go.
This isn't their first album, but the first album is very much the prototype for what became the second wave Norwegian black metal. Well, maybe the return, I guess, would probably be more that prototype. But, they started off black metal with a Motorhead influence. Right here, Under the Sign of Black Mark, was an evolution. The songs, they got more evil sounding to me. The songs got a lot better. But then, after Bloodfire Death was a good transitional album, they settled on Hammerheart, which Quorthon admitted to being heavily influenced by Manowar. And you can kind of hear it. That Manowar kind of cuts through on this, the plod, the epicness. Obviously, Quorthon wasn't as straight up heavy metal as Manowar was, but this was his adaptation of that style. And man, it could be two different bands. I think it's all super fantastic. I think of the Viking era, Blood on Ice is my favorite. I've said that a million times on these videos. It's just when you got the Wood Woman and the Lake on your album, those are two perfect songs as far as I'm concerned. The Bathory definitely changed their sound. At the time, I don't remember if this was popular or not. I was kind of a latecomer. Bathory wasn't a band that I was into in the teens. I kind of missed them. I think I discovered this album at a record store used on tape for $1 and loved it. But it kind of made me backtrack a little bit. But great stuff. Great band, obviously. I think some Swedish museum just put Bathory in it here recently, which seems like it's a decade too late, but very cool. Who's next? Aaron.
All right. I guess we had mentioned this earlier. Gathering.
Yep.
I think there's another one from this era, Almost a Dance, I think.
Yep.
That I don't have. And this stuff is doom death metal vocals, kind of like Celestial Season, without the string quartet or the string section.
Yep.
Synths instead, but very similar, and the death growl enunciation very similar to the vocalist from Celestial Season as well.
Man, that Solar Lovers album, my Celestial Season, I love that album.
One of my favorite albums of all time. Recently got the one before that. Somebody did an LP reissue, and like you could hear where they were going, but definitely did not enjoy it as much as Solar Lovers, and I never heard the one after that either.
Neither.
I guess that's an example of change, because I think I'd heard they went real psychedelic or something, but I could be wrong.
I almost picked Celestial Season for tonight because, those first two albums alone are a big change.
Yep.
Yeah. This is a few years later, If Then Else. It definitely has pop elements. On the surface, I would say way poppier than I ever want to go in my listening, but she makes it work. Annika.
So good.
She makes me want to listen to this kind of stuff, or did when she was in there. And great songs. The one before this, How to Measure a Planet.
Oh, I love that record.
Led to me by a friend in college that was like, this is a little lighter. You might like it. Like, it's good to study for tests too and stuff. And I put it on and I was like, yeah, this is great, because I think the only thing I had heard was Nighttime Birds, that song. I never had those CDs and stuff, but I'd hear them on comps, and I was like, this band's really good, but I never went out and got any of their stuff.
I gotta say that How to Measure a Planet, the second CD, there's a song on there about Mozart. Man, that thing brings me to tears every time I listen to it. It's so good.
Yeah. This one's a little more compact, though.
Yep.
I think it was a double album. And, was there another one? Anyway, they kind of went a little parallel to Anathema, I think.
A little bit. Yeah.
Stylistically, where Anathema started using drum loops and like kind of pop elements and things like that. They used the electronic beats and stuff like that and actually made it work. A lot of times that stuff makes me cringe, but this did not. But humongous style change from the Doom Death to this stuff.
Yep. Great pick.
Apparently they're still making music, I think. And this whole discussion is just making me realize how much I've lost touch with bands I grew up with, and
it happens.
Should probably do something about that.
The hunt is always fun.
True, and I think that's part of it now. Like, I can't go out and buy this stuff. There's nowhere to buy it, and I don't know. I don't get the same feeling from ordering it. I get a good feeling out of supporting the band, but usually it's from some person on eBay, because you can't find it from the band. It's sold out from the band, and I missed out on it years ago. So it's like I have to get it secondhand, and the only person that profits is the person that decided to sell it out of their collection.
Yep.
Sucks the fun out of it. I used to like to go to these stores, and like Ides in Pittsburgh would have the imported stuff, so I get Satyricon or whatever stuff I couldn't find in Camelot Music, and I don't know, I just don't do that anymore, and I kind of miss it.
Yep.
You still have a record store up by you?
Yeah, here.
They had some cool stuff in there.
Yeah, they did, but if you want to, everything I find, I flip over. I'm like, $50, and now you can keep it.
I did notice they're a little pricey. I saw Napalm Death LP for like $35-$40 or something. I was like, no,
it's too fucking much.
And it was like a new one. It wasn't like a used one, a used copy of like Mentally Murdered or something.
No, right. All right, Mr. Allen.
Yep. Well, I've just got to say, you mentioned Celestial Season, and that makes me incredibly happy, because actually one of the guys who watches the stream has texted me a few times, like, you guys need to talk about Solar Lovers at some point. I'm like,
such a good record.
We'll find a time to work it in. It's one of his favorite albums. And so, Matt, if you're not watching live, if you're watching this later, we got Celestial Season in there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a random one. It was that was another one of like, my girlfriend loved that album and introduced him to it, and he just went nuts for that album when it came out. Kind of sticking again in that mid-90s vein of bands that were kind of deathy and then got kind of gothy and kind of weird. I don't know if anybody will remember this one because you don't hear them talked about much. Pyogenesis.
Oh yeah,
yeah. This band did some,
yes.
All right then.
He's going to do a victory lap around the house now. Biogenesis, biogenesis.
I'll see your celestial season and I'll raise you a Pyogenesis. Yes, fuck Pyogenesis. Yeah, they very much fit in with that same style. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we've talked about this style a lot tonight with one of these bands that started out in that heavily deathy kind of raw sound, and very quickly cleaned it up. This album, one of the girls I dated in the mid-90s, this was her favorite album of all time. She could not stop playing Sweet X-Rated Nothings when it came out. And it's, not a lot of other bands really nailed this same style. It's, very, very catchy, very energetic. Yeah, it's the same. Some people you play it and they don't like it. And it's like, oh, it's really simple. There's not much to it. Just like, yeah, but it's also very, very hook-oriented. But yeah, it didn't take them 2 albums later, and they were doing like the Unpop album, which just was complete stylistic shift. It had nothing in common with what they'd done before. In between they had Twin Ale Blood, which it's been ages since I've heard. I don't have a copy of it, so it's not one I can comment on real intelligently. But it was a band that really quickly went through the same kind of progression we talked about, where they went from being an extreme metal band to essentially not even a metal band over the course of just a couple of albums. I think it seems like folks have gravitated towards Twin Ale Pop over time. That it wasn't so bad. Unpop seems to be the one that is still tough. Okay, Matt, good on you. But yeah, so I've always kept these two. Always liked them.
One word, guy thrown up in the toilet for like 20 minutes at the end. Am I remembering that right?
I believe so. Yeah, because one of them. Yeah, it's got like on the CD player. It's one of those 2 where they thought they'd be clever and put like 98 songs of like 3 seconds a piece of just noise. So thanks. That makes it so easy to find when you're trying to skip tracks around on your CD player or something.
Well, the next handful of bands are pretty obvious choices for me, but now that Matt's in the chat, I might as well. Paradise Lost, one of the big Peaceville 3. They started off just pretty heavy death, doom, gothic. The album Gothic's my favorite Paradise Lost album. I think that was the first one I heard. That's probably why. But other than they had a poor drummer. But as they went on, like Shades of God and Icon, they got a little more goth rocky. And then it came to this album, Draconian Times, which is very poppy but goth rock based with a little metal backbone. This album is so insanely catchy. Holy shit. Nick Holmes is trying to emulate a James Hetfield type of thing. Then this album came out. I remember getting this as a promo and almost threw this in the garbage too. In fact, I might have. I took it out of the garbage. I'm like, what the hell is this synth pop garbage? But one thing happened. I had to review it for something, and I started listening to it, and it was probably 2 listens in, and it clicked. So catchy. It's hard not to respect something this well written, and even though it's super poppy, but from here, Paradise Lost continued to be shapeshifters for a while before coming back around to a style that can be very reminiscent of their early albums, but definitely a band that did not scoff at change. They just said, hell with it, we're going to do whatever we want. And it is Aaron's turn.
This is an example where the change in style might come out of transitioning from one band to another band, where you retain that style a little bit. What's this one?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
There's more than a few similarities to Carnivore.
Yep.
Early, this in Origin of the Feces. And I think I had this, and I was like, this is cool. I like this band. They're like really different than all the other bands, unsuccessfully coping with the natural beauty of infidelity. All that, and it was just like a song of silence on here. It's just like, quiet for a minute or something. So I like their attitude and everything. And then
Yeah.
I saw the video for it's either Black Number One or Christian Woman or something like that. And I really liked it a lot, but it wasn't what I was expecting after Slow, Deep, and Hard. But obviously, it worked in their favor, didn't it?
Oh yeah, huge.
I don't think they would have had nearly the popularity if they stayed in this style.
Oh, definitely not.
I like both eras. And they, again, goth rock, that seems to be the theme of the night.
It was a very 90s revelation.
Oh, big time. And they were amazing at it. And again, this is another one along with Wild Honey and Angel in the Dark River and stuff that my friends and probably everybody else's friends were listening to this, even the ones that weren't necessarily into brutal stuff. I had some friends were kind of, you never knew if they were going to like it or not. You'd play this and they're like, I love it. You play it, another death metal band, they're like, I don't like this. And then they'd be into Deicide, kind of random.
Yep.
So whatever. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. Typo Negative, definitely listen to them a lot. And it seemed like depending on the situation, you listen to one era or another. But yeah, Slow, Deep, and Hard. I haven't listened to that one in a long time.
That October Rust was like the Barry White album that all metalheads have.
That's very well said and true.
Great album though. Great vibe to it.
Absolutely.
Mr. Allen.
All right, getting towards the bottom of the stack here.
Yeah, me too. I got 3 left.
Let's see. One of my, again, all-time favorite bands, although they've kind of fallen off in recent years. Blind Guardian through the 1990s, late 80s and early mid-90s, probably the best power speed band on the planet.
Oh, they're so good.
Everything up through, this album right here, this is where they peaked for me, but it's still, even, the next album, they're still doing that style, but, you start to notice here that they're starting to get this more symphonic element. They're getting their foot off the gas pedal a little bit and doing some more of these big, pompous sounding, sounds. But where it really changes is the next one. I remember when I got this album, I knew a lot of their older albums by heart at that point. And I got this one, and I didn't dislike it at first, but I did not immediately latch onto it like I had all their others. Because, this album is, compared to the others, is a very slow album. The speed is missing from most of this album. And it's really good. It took me I was like, I know what this band, I know they're good songwriters. I think I'm going to like this, but I'm going to have to really give this some time. So this was a grower for me. And it ended up being one of my favorites. I love the album to death now, but it is very different. And it marks a huge change in their direction that after this, they never really go back to the speed metal flat out. They still have faster songs, of course, and they're still good. But from there they go to their big watershed moment with Nightfall and Middle Earth.
Yep.
And even after this, they just they kind of do the bigger symphonic things, and they keep them in a steady pace. This was the last great album, in my opinion. The ones after this, they're good albums, but they're not essential albums anymore.
Yeah.
But they had this huge change where they gave up the velocity, and instead, they kind of built up instead of just blazing straight ahead. But both eras worked, at least for a while.
Right on. I'm up. Next up, we talked about this band early on, Entombed. Left-Hand Path. And they went from here, which this is a great record. This is perfection. They followed up with Clandestine, which to me is a train wreck. People think I'm crazy for saying that, but the song structures are a mess. It's like a string of riffs. Couple good songs. Nicky Anderson, the drummer, actually sang on that record, and his voice isn't that great on that record. Then they went to this, which ultimately, is this a stylistic change? I don't know. It might be more of an evolution. Again, they're on Columbia along with a lot of other earache bands that signed, and they shifted their sound. Did it work for them? Yeah, it really did. Wolverine Blues, To Ride, Shoot Straight, Speak the Truth. It's really good. I mean, they shown with Clandestine that they couldn't maintain a good straight up death metal structure or spirit. They couldn't. I mean, they spent all that time making Left Hand Path, which is a lot of nihilist stuff, and had Johnny from Unleashed in on it too. Kind of a punky death metal thing going into Clandestine, which is a mess. This stuff makes sense to me. I mean, I really enjoyed this transition. I was a little surprised by it. It was more stripped down HM2 guitar tone pedal. They continued with their sound, but songs got a little more stripped down, a little more rock, MC5 punk influenced. Good shit. Definitely a big change though, and they continued on for years with that. They didn't really deviate much after that.
I really love the Morning Star album.
That was a good album. That was a good one. Yeah.
The Wolverine Blues, I like it a lot more now than I did at the time. And I was a fan of Clandestine.
Oh.
That's where I started with them. It's the first stuff I ever heard. So
I tried so hard. I mean,
I heard my Hand Path. It was kind of a departure, because I didn't hear it first.
Right.
I like it all now. And Inferno is really cool. I don't have the newest, like the Entombed AD and stuff. Uprising, there you go. That
was
great.
a good one too.
Yeah, very good stuff.
Okay, who's up next? That would be Aaron. Well, let me get you up there.
All right, I only have a couple things. One of which I need to grab, but I'll just show this because it's next to me here. So stepping outside of metal a little bit, but I think it's pretty relevant to a lot of bands. Changes in style from Anathema to Tiamat to all those. That's Pink Floyd.
Yep.
Yeah,
for sure.
This early stuff. I mean, there's one I forgot to grab is Umaguma, however you say it. Point being, this has got some really weird stuff on it. Okay, obviously Voivod covered a song off of here, and you've got Interstellar Overdrive, which is jam band stuff before jam bands really were a thing. And I used to see this tape at the store, and my God, I was like, get that thing away from me. Look at that. And there's one on the back, too. Enjoy that.
Yeah.
Right? But this is all those early singles. Careful with that Axe Eugene and stuff. And I enjoy this stuff very much. Not on a regular basis, but they took the weirdest guy in the band and didn't pick him up for a gig one day, and then Sid Barrett wasn't in the band anymore, and then they got weirder. They've got Amagamas, like you listen to like Nick Mason's and Roger Waters' sides of those LPs, and they got weirder somehow. And then, you get, I guess, other sources of revenue paying you to do movie soundtracks and stuff, Secured by Clouds, and then you have this. Like who were we talking about earlier? Sabbath, that was just within a couple years. These big shifts and these just masterpiece albums, with them, it's the same thing. Sometimes in the same year, Secured by Clouds, and then Adam Hart Mother and Metal. You can hear on Metal where they were going to go with Dark Side, and then you have one of the biggest albums ever made. They went from some of the weirdest stuff to Dark Side of the Moon. I've got a bike, you can ride it if you like, yes. And that was, more poppy stuff than the stuff on Adam Hart Mother or something, Anyway, and then they've got the era of the Half-Live songs. Yeah, there's on the record, half ambient weird stuff, and that's several species of small furry animals and stuff. Concept album.
Probably one of the first concept albums, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I guess along with like Tommy.
Tommy's who is usually cited as the first, but
yeah,
forgot about that one.
Yeah, I don't know if I can think of other ones. And then, we end up with this posthumously released Rick Wright stuff. Was this Endless River? Anyway, I'm hard pressed to find more eras of change because they went through that 80s momentary lapse of reason kind of radio rock thing to where, not my favorite albums and not my least favorite either. But I think I'm like most people in the era that I like to listen to of them. But no wonder they were so influential on a lot of bands. There's a lot of different styles to pick from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alan.
Let's see. I didn't pull anything for this band because I have the before, but not the after. But we haven't mentioned them yet. So, time to pull the trigger on Celtic Frost.
I don't have the Big Change album, so I didn't. Well, no,
That's same here. But I mean, they're born out of this very raw Hellhammer band. Morbid Tales. While a step forward from Hellhammer and cleaner, it still very much has the Hellhammer sounds to it. And man, they very, very rapidly 2 albums later, and you're hearing Mexican radio. And then that's not even the weird part. You have to get to the album after that when they are suddenly sponsored by a hairspray company and going full on almost glam love. And then they quickly cycle out of that and make a fairly okay thrash album after that with Vanity Nemesis.
Yeah.
So a band that never really made the same album twice and had some very big stylistic shifts. and people are very divided that, some people feel like, they were big shifts for the good, and other people feel like they were big shifts that were, absolutely abysmal. Some of the worst decisions ever made in heavy metal, according to some people.
But they ended on top, though. That Monotheist was a great fucking record.
I agree. I really liked, that was one of the examples of a band coming back and doing it right and actually adding something to their legacy, which is pretty rare with those reunion projects in my experience. But yeah, I mean, the roller coaster ride through their catalog, in the second half of the 80s is crazy. They had to be mentioned before we wrapped things up tonight.
They even had like a techno demo that I can't remember the name of it. It had a little tank on it. Fucking terrible.
Was it? That wasn't the Apollyon Sun, was it?
No. It was. God damn it. Sorry, everybody. Something Juggin. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh, I don't know. Don't know that one.
It was like a demo that never really got released. It was all electronic. It was bad. Bad. Yeah, here's another good one. Oop. No. Hip Hop Juggin. That's it, Eric. Thank you. Oh man, it was fucking abysmal. And you got Discharge doing Grave New World. That is garbage. Anyway, I'm up. I got 2 left. When this came out, I was pissed. I was riding off of Voivod. I'm a big fan of Voivod all the way from the beginning. Nothing Face, kind of the writing on the wall. Really a great record. Really overproduced, but really good. When this came out, oh my God, Panorama hit my ears as like rockin' Voivod. I could not get past it. And for a longest time, my buddy Jeff Wagner would go on and on how great this record was, and I would just have scathing debates with the guy on the phone about it. But with maturity and getting used to other musical styles as you get older, I love this record? I don't love it, but I like it a lot more than I did when it came out, and I can listen to it. There's still Voivod in here, but it's just really bizarre. Really a weird shift for me.
I go back to it every few years. See if I like it more.
Do you?
Yes and no. I don't really like it more, but the songs become earworms. And just you holding up the cover, I can hear the songs in my head and remember the quirky lyrics and the riffs. And I don't know, maybe I do like it now. Maybe I'll listen to it tomorrow.
There you go.
See if I like it anymore. Obviously, it's stuck in my head for, what did that come out, 30 years ago? 92, 91.
91.
Yep.
Yeah.
Damn. So just as old as Like an Ever-Flowing Stream.
Yeah, I got the first 5 LPs and then that one on CD, and then I kind of lost track. I listened to the newest one up at your place, and yeah, their first few albums are insane. War and Pain, like they didn't sound like I think I first heard them on Killing Technology or Nothing Face or something like that. Yeah.
Right on.
Out again, the old angel rat.
You're up, Aaron.
Oh, well, I gotta get up for this one, but
Well, while you're getting that, I'll put Alan up.
okay.
Oh, I got to get up one then too. I was going to get up when Aaron was talking.
Well,
I'll mention this one because again, I don't think I have any of the after to mention. Overkill, went through a big style shift in '93, and actually, I guess it was technically their second shift. Feel the Fire is an amazing album.
Yeah,
but Overkill isn't known. It's more that early 1980s kind of power speed sound more than the thrash metal that they're really associated with.
Yep.
They quickly became what could have arguably been number 5 of the big thrash bands.
Yep.
And they made several great albums there, especially Years of Decay, Horoscope.
Oh, so good.
And then you get to 93, and this is another case of where I got too hyped up for an album, but I didn't. I feel justified in not liking this album. I hear they're going to have another album come out in 1993, and I'm hyped for it, and I'm a broke student. And I literally skipped meals to save money to buy that album when it came out. And I bought I Hear Black.
They're grunge album. It goes on for fucking ever, and you could tell they were completely influenced by grunge.
Yeah, they complete going. At that point, it became very, very clear to me that what had happened in 1991 with the Black Album and Nevermore and or Nevermind and 10 all coming out, that it was going to make a big change in everything.
Yeah.
And Overkill bounced back some.
It took them a while. It took them a few albums.
I thought, what was it? Wide Fucking Open wasn't bad. They got back on track a little bit with that one. But even from there forward, they got much more groove oriented for a long time. It wasn't 90. It wasn't Biohazard or Pantera level stuff, but it was. They definitely never quite got back to the really sharp thrash licks that they were so good at in the late 80s and early 90s.
Ironbound was a good return.
I don't know if I heard that one. This Overkill is another one of those bands. I think the last one I went out and bought was probably Underground and Below. And after that, every couple of albums I'll check back in, or I'll somebody will start hyping one of the new albums, be like, "Oh, Overkill is back, best album since taking over." Yeah, and I'll check it out and just be like, no, it's not, and just move on. It's not this; it's bad, but it's just like this does not deserve any hype. I've yet to find one from the other recent catalog that I felt like, wow, this is actually a really good album. This one, I'm going to latch onto this one.
Post Horoscope Overkill albums, they fell into a thing where they started making their albums 3 songs too long, and it's still to this day. I mean. What's the Electric Age? No, what's the new one? I just bought it.
Couldn't tell you.
I don't know. They're one of those bands that I loved so much growing up. In fact, I've been thinking about doing like a career video on them, but so I had to fill in some holes, and I had to buy Wide Fucking Open, the Underground Below, some shit I didn't have, and sitting there listening to them all together, it's hard. It's hard to listen to them all together because they're so fucking long. There's a couple good songs on each one, but man, they make you work for it. So Wings of War, yeah. Thanks, Todd.
Oh, okay.
The Wings of War is good. There's some punk feel to it. Again, cut a couple songs off it, and it'd be a much better album. But yeah, I don't know how we got off on this tangent, but yeah. Aaron, you're back.
Yes. I guess I have one more that's in my honorable mention pile, I guess. This might be a little bit of stretch Nobody's talked about Ulver, and I'm not going to, but something a little in that vein, I guess. Arcturus.
Oh yeah.
Might be a little bit of a stretch, but like this is one of my favorite albums, and probably a lot of people, and I'd never heard anything like it.
Oh.
And it's great. And then I like this too. But when this came out, like the kind of operatic, almost like carnival aspect of it was a little hard to swallow. This one took a lot more listens to get into.
Oh yeah.
And again, I do like them a lot. Both. Well, I like this one, and I can't remember the name of the one after this with Eson and all these other people. Sham Mirrors.
Yeah.
But I think the shift from this one to this one.
Big, huge.
Where am I backwards on my screen here? Yeah, huge stylistic shift, and I didn't think they could get more avant-garde than this, but they did somehow. So yeah, it's a band I need to revisit again, big time.
It's a pretty big shift from that Constellation EP to the first.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they're a band that was always forward thinking, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I like their stuff, but that's the kind of stuff I find it. I'm not in the mood to sit and listen to it very often, just because if you don't pay attention to it, you don't really get a lot out of it. It just goes by and you miss it.
I think this was extremely listenable.
Yes,
more eclectic as it is. I think the rest of them not so much. Like you said, on Overkill, you got to kind of work for it a little bit. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I might as well jump in here. This is my last one. I wasn't going to talk about this album, and I really have little good to say about this album, but it's worth mentioning Riot Chaos by Dissection. I mean, I know people that love this record, and some people, this is the first Dissection they heard, so this is what they associate Dissection with, which, again, is fine. You know, everybody hears the same music differently, but in No Advice defense, how do you follow up Storm of the Light's Bane? How do you follow up an album that good, that perfect? I mean, from start to finish, that is
something similar to it.
Yeah, you do exactly
something similar.
You do something similar. You try to do the same thing, but it never works out. It might be similar, but not as good. So I mean, it's almost logical to change up your sound a little bit.
Yeah.
But this is just, God, dumbed down. It just seems like a dumbed down version of Dissection. Starless Eon and there's an instrumental on here. The only two songs I kind of like, okay, that's okay. But the rest of this stuff, I just like the vocals on it. I just like the lyrical concepts. I just like the new metal feel. People would say I'm stupid for saying new metal, but there's definitely a dumbed down spirit on this. It is not on the Somber Lane. It is not on Storm of the Light's Bane. Those are great records, and this is a what the fuck moment. I don't know. There you go.
Great example of a change.
Yep.
Yeah, that didn't even pop into my head. That's a really good point.
Yep. Is that it? Are we done?
I don't have any more. I'm sure I could probably think of something, but I think it was over our 10 there.
Well, yeah. I mean, I could have kept going. I had to call it Running Wild. I figured, Alan will get the Running Wild covered, no problem, and he didn't. So I'm like, oh shit, I should have grabbed Running Wild. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, but it was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me on Friday night. Aaron, it was great to have you.
Yes, that was awesome being on here. I appreciate it, and great to meet you, Alan.
Great to meet you, Aaron. You mentioned Celestial Season. You were always thumbs up in my book for that.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing else.
One of my absolute favorites.
You can go totally Cold Lake on the next Nechochwen album, and you still get the thumbs up.
I'm not going to. I'm not going Cold Lake. I'm not going Angel Rat.
We'll get you on here again. Another topic, another day.
Definitely.
We're going to keep on doing these until we get tired of it or everybody gets tired of us.
Until we change our sound and talking about video games or something.
Start talking about politics, we'll change.
Streams that changed their sound.
Yeah. But thank you everybody for watching. Sorry we're down a couple weeks, but absence makes the heart grow fonder. Maybe. Don't know. But we'll catch you next week. We got some other people that'll be coming along here to talk with us, so stay tuned. And until then, 2021, Kanawha Black. It's coming. Did I say it correct?
You did.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Like a native West Virginian.
And it is completely awesome. It is a very awesome follow-up to Heart of Akamon. And people get ready because it's going to kick your ass for sure. And take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Everybody take care.
Bye. See ya.